All right, I'm going to call our meeting back to order. I would like to welcome everybody in attendance. Looks like we have a rather large crowd tonight, and I'd like to welcome all of you as we partake in the business of Macon County. I would ask that you please, if you don't mind, please silence your cell phones so we can admire civil discourse up here and have a respectful conversation. Looks like we have a lot of people that are going to be speaking tonight. A couple different topics, looks like. And we're going to roll right on since our public hearing for our fiscal 22-23 budget was scheduled for 6 p.m. It's now 6:15. We're running a few minutes late, so I'm going to go ahead and call our public meeting to order regarding the fiscal year 22-23 budget. Mr. Manager?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. All the changes that were discussed at the last budget work session have been incorporated into the document that's in front of you tonight. That will be the fiscal year 22-23 budget. If it is adopted, those changes do include $8,490 increase to the North Carolina Forest Service, and it also includes the increases that we discussed pertaining to the 4 fire departments that we're requesting increases. So all those changes have been made that we discussed, and the budget is now presented for your consideration.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, any questions for the County Manager?
Just if y'all could speak up, it's a little hard to hear.
How about now?
Yes.
All right, I'll lean in a little bit closer. Commissioners, any questions? Looks like we have about 12 people signed up to speak regarding our budget. Just to remind you, we have try and keep a 5-minute time limit. I will give everybody ample opportunity to speak, and we'll even offer others after we're done with this. But we'll try and keep this to give everybody ample time, try and hold it to 5 minutes. So with that, Mary Ann Ingram, I believe.
Good evening, gentlemen, and gentle ladies. Thank you for having us speak. And I'm kind of a day late and a dollar short here because what I wanted to speak about does not have anything to do with the library at this point. It has to do with our swimming pool and the fact that it is probably the water is one of the most gorgeous pools that I've seen in a long, long time. And when you were swimming at 9 to 10 in the morning to get your workout and you turn and you see the mountains, it is incredible. And we have an awful lot of people who are helping to keep that pool pristine. In fact, we have 28 of them. And I started talking with the manager, and she gave me a lot of good information, and I told her that I would speak in their behalf. The manager is Jamie Waldrop, and assistant manager is Jan Barrett, sorry. And they have 28 people on their staff. And when I go there in the morning, the place is perfect. It's clean. The bathrooms, the showers, every place is clean. And then when I get in the water, it is clean. And they don't just scoop out the bugs. They are sweeping on the sides to clean it so that we have a nice place to swim. And to get all that done, these people are standing out there with no shirts on. They leave to go have lunch, even though Jamie has told them, save your money, bring your lunch. They go out and get lunch. Nobody sends them anything. Has anybody in the community gone by and left them a drink or taken them some goodies from someplace. If you're using the pool for your child or anyone else, oh man, it's always nice to have a surprise when you go into work. But what I want to talk about is, because I am very fair-skinned and I have been a lifeguard, I've been a swimming coach, I have been teaching swimming since the 70s, and I'm paying for it now. I've been sliced and diced by the dermatologist. I have to wear everything covered to go swim and be outside. And these kids are giving their time and their skin to all of us and our children. And what I'm asking, and I know that you've already made a decision on your budget, but there are shirts that these kids could be wearing that are cool, that are drying when they jump in the water. It keeps the sun off of them, it keeps the rays off of them that are harming their skin. And they cost $15 a piece. 28 times 15 is $420. And to make this short, I am betting with you guys that you're going to step up to the plate. I got $120 right here, 25% to get those shirts. And that's in the pot. And if y'all can cover the rest of it, I will even get them ordered. And I can probably talk them into free shipping. And we might even be able to get red. Here's your moment. See, y'all are getting off easy now. I'm going to take this to Jamie.
So how much are you short total now?
The total is $420. Right now, I'm looking at $220.
What's that divided by 5?
Divided by 5?
40.
Wait a minute. 5, that's 70, about $75 a piece.
No.
That can't be right.
Okay, I don't have my phone working. Commissioner Gillen, right here.
You can buy britches now. Get all them Republicans to give $1. You done something, buddy.
Never mind. I've already got
Now, Marianne, you're not making a commission on this,
I'm
are
not
you?
making a commission, I'm not making a dime. But those kids are going to have their arms covered.
Good for you, Marianne. Thank you.
On the other part of your budget, I might be back up.
All right, Angela Norman. Welcome, Angela.
I don't know how I'm supposed to call it that. All right, I'll take your money if you guys want me to have it, but good job. So first, I just want to thank Commissioner Ronnie Bill and the board members who voted to increase the funding to the Macon County Library employees. Those people work incredibly hard to provide services and programs for our community. I'm struggling to understand Commissioner Higdon believing that funding the salaries of the library employees should be used as punishment over their pride display. I can't wrap my head around how someone can ignore all the tremendous things that they do the other 11 months out of the year. I fully support the library and their staff, and I'm grateful for what they do all year round, and for their work during the month of June to make the LGBTQ+ community feel seen, included, and loved, even if it's just for a few weeks. Youth in this area know that the community and the culture is in a lot of ways, such as this, actively hostile to them. It's important that they have some place where they can go, see themselves, be themselves, and have the intellectual freedom that they are entitled to. Parenting is something that everyone in this room obviously takes very seriously, as we should. However, parenting starts in our homes, not our public places that are an asset for our community, and that's to all of our community. To the adults in this room that want to protect our children so badly, Macon County is in substantial need for foster parents. I have two beautiful daughters, one of them coming from my time spent as an IFT foster parent specializing in at-risk youth. There's also a huge need for substitute teachers in the public school system, as well as volunteers for Macon County Program for Progress, because they do community outreach with children as well. Perhaps you'd like to get involved with my personal favorite, Kids Place. They are Macon County's only not-for-profit organization that coordinates the efforts of child protection services, forensic interviewing, law enforcement, prosecutors, and child family advocates, medical and mental health experts. This is an advocacy center that my family works very closely with, and they are an excellent step to getting involved and taking a direct approach to protecting the kids of Macon County. I do have contact numbers for all the ways I've listed to help, and I'm more than happy to stay around and give those out to you if you are here on the behalf of children in our community. Paul, if I could take a moment to directly speak with you. I don't know you personally, but I do know and I love some of your family dearly. It's hard for me to stand here and disagree with you because I respect you. As a business owner myself, I respect your very successful business that you've obviously put your entire life into. As a peer of your children, I do respect you as a parent.
Can you speak in the mic a little bit more?
Yes.
They can hear you in the back.
You have beautiful grandbabies who will indefinitely grow up here and be proud of their grandpa because you have done and you continue to do a lot for our community, and I do thank you for that. It's hard for me to stand here and ask someone who is a good man to understand that this is about so much more than a very small boat display. I'm sure you and I both would really love to parent all the kids of Macon County, but we also know that that's impossible. Paul, I feel that it's very obvious that you were a good father and you were someone that your family could turn to. Unfortunately, all the kids of Macon County, they don't have good fathers. They don't have good mothers. They don't have good parents. They don't have advocates for them. But what we can offer them is we can offer them a safe place to go. We can offer them a safe place to go research, surrounded by safe adults. I mean, my 10-year-old daughter has access to the internet every single day. I would much rather she can come to me as a parent because I'm a safe parent. I'm a safe adult, and she knows that. However, some kids, they're not lucky enough to have that. And as a community, when you took your oath, you took it for all of us. You took it for the kids who are less fortunate and for the kids who haven't been privileged to grow up in a community like yourself and have probably never entered the church doors as yourself. So here, I hope you can see who is here on behalf of our children and who's here for debate. This isn't a time to argue. It's not a time to bring up political differences, religious differences, or personal opinion. This is a time to reflect on our statements made here today. Each child sitting in this room has already made a decision on if you are a safe adult or not. I'm going to read that again. Each child sitting in this room has already made a decision on whether you are a safe adult. These children in here, they know how you feel about their family and their friends and maybe even themselves. As everyone who continues to speak tonight and those who oppose me, I encourage you to speak to the kids in this room. I encourage you to speak to them and directly tell them why that they're excluded and why they can't have 4 weeks out of a year. I encourage you to speak to them from your heart, not from our political blinders, not from how we grew up, and not from the life as we know it. Each of us have different traumas. Each of us have different backgrounds, and we can come together and find a common ground to make Macon County a safe place for all of our kids. Thank you for taking your time, for letting me take your time, and I look forward to seeing you guys soon, and I hope that we can all work together and come up with a reasonable, ethical solution for our library and the salaries. Thank you.
All right, Brittany Lofthouse. Welcome, Brittany.
When I was 14 years old, during one of the many counseling sessions that I had to go through, my Southern Baptist preacher told me that the sexual abuse that I endured for most of my childhood, since kindergarten to be exact, was all part of God's plan and that I should just accept it. That was the first time that your church let me down. Despite that, I still grew up in the church. I still gave my life to the Lord. But a dozen times over, for this reason or that, some church somewhere, even one right here in this very county, made me feel unwelcomed, or not worthy, or lesser than, because I'm broken. But I never understood that, because if church is no place for the broken, then what's its purpose? I tell you all of that because last week, Commissioner Higdon specifically referenced this book, A Church for All. I venture to say that Mr. Higdon didn't read this book, just like he didn't speak to the library about his objection to the pride display. But you know what they say, to never judge a book by its cover. Commissioner Higdon said that he couldn't support funding to an organization that supports those types of displays. And he even specifically stated that a book about religion and God and church would never be on a display. But then what is this? There's not a reference anywhere in here to anything that has to do with anything other than going to church and worshiping, and that it's a church for all, and it doesn't matter if you're poor or wealthy, plain or dressy, all embracing, spirit gracing, each one at our church for all. Bodies wiggling and mommies reading, children giggling, daddies pleading, toddlers flailing, babies wailing, but there's room at our church for all. Hands receiving, hands connecting, hearts believing, hearts accepting. Feel the Spirit. Can you hear it? Because it's here at our church for all.
Amen.
So while this book may have been on the children's display in the library last year, which actually has no bearing on what the library funds are for intended today in this budget that you're considering, I still think it's important to note that the 14-year-old me desperately needed a book like this. A book to tell me that my experience was the exception and not the rule. If more children read this book, or even in today's society, if more adults read this book, it could help them find their way back to church. Kind of like the parable of the lost sheep that you might have read about in the book of Matthew. So to say promoting a book like this, a book that tells the story of the unconditional, judgment-free, unwavering, reckless love of God. Wait, are we talking about this book? Or are we talking about this book? Anyway, to say promoting these types of books deserve punishment for the staff and their funding, it's infuriating. And it goes against every single lesson that I've learned in this book. These books taught me love and compassion and empathy. These books taught me that the hatred of a few, albeit very loud, people have spewed over a display of books in our library may be what some churches preach, but it's certainly not what my God teaches. Last year, one of the people who stood up here and spoke to you said that the people who would support such a display at the library are always obnoxiously loud. And while I am no doubt obnoxiously loud, as you all are well aware, it's because I support loving and accepting everyone, regardless of their shortcomings, even if those shortcomings are being narrow-minded and attempting to ostracize a community of people because you disagree with how they live their lives. No one, and I mean no one, should ever have to be made to feel lesser than because someone else holds themselves in such a high regard. While some have claimed that the majority of people in Macon County shared those types of views, I think the response that you see here tonight proves that is certainly not the case. I say all of that to say this. I do not care who you are or what you look like, where you're from or who you love, or anything else. I love you, even if I don't agree with you. I love you because that's what my God has called me to do. And as long as I am breathing, I will always, and I mean I will always, be obnoxiously loud about standing up for the things or the people who may not be able or may not have the ability or the courage to speak for themselves. Because after all, Isaiah 1:17 calls me to do so. Learn to do right, seek justice, defend the oppressed, take up the cause of the fatherless, and plead the case of the widow. And in this case, it isn't even about the LGBTQ plus community that your bigoted comments harm. Today, I want to speak for the library employees you are attempting to punish based on your personal beliefs. Library employees who work tirelessly 12 months out of the year to provide a space for homeschool students to learn, for senior citizens to meet and to interact with one another, a meeting room for a North Carolina senator who reserved a host to hold a state legislature meeting, a New Year's Eve party that my children and I attend, an art exhibit by an incredible artist, staying after hours and after the library has closed to host a public forum for the election so the public can be more informed when voting. Punishing those employees for simply doing their job is shameful and is no way representative of how the majority of Macon County feels. Mr. Higdon, you keep saying that these things are your personal opinion, but that isn't what your job as a commissioner is to do. You were elected to represent your district, to represent your county, not your own personal beliefs. So I want you and the rest of the board to know that I, along with the majority of Macon County, firmly support the Macon County Public Library and providing additional funding for their incredible employees. Thank
you. Bill Dyer.
Earlier today, you guys received an email from the library board, and I've got paper copies here for y'all. Last time we had a little glitch on that, so I wanted to make sure that you got copies. There's plenty there. I'm coming to represent the Library Board of Trustees, and let me begin by saying this. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to serve on the Macon County Public Library Board of Trustees. While I've served on the board, and I've served on other boards, mostly those that are non-profit, this is my first experience with a board that serves the general public. In doing so, I've discovered that our county has many dedicated volunteers. And from the first lady that stepped up here and was waving money around, we got to experience the spirit of volunteerism right in our midst. It was wonderful. And the library and the Friends of the Library is no exception. We've got volunteers that tirelessly support our library with their time, their talent, and their resources. And I would like for those folks to stand up. There's a bunch of you here. If you support the library and you've given of yourself in support of them in any way, please just stand up. Just stand up. That's just the tip of the iceberg, guys. There's plenty more out there. And so, anyway, through their determined effort, some financial headway is made each year to offset the deficits in the budget for our funding. If these volunteers could read every book in the library, I'm sure all of them would find something that they disagree with. However, all have been willing to set aside those personal differences for the greater good of the library's mission to the general public. They set it aside and looked at the big picture. So I have the utmost respect for such selfless resolve and dedication. I'm going to finish up here. That document I gave you, the first little chunk has to do with the budget, and the last little chunk has to do with the budget. Everything in between is just a report on our public hearing and the board's response to it last week. So the library board's trustees has asked me to speak tonight in an appeal for increased funding for the library in this year's budget. Over the past 10 years, the library has received a 5% increase in funding. During that time, inflation grew 16%. And that does not include the inflation that we're currently experiencing in 2022. This negative pattern has the greatest impact on library staff and their retention. Starting salary at the library as a library employee is $10 an hour. With all this said, I urge you to increase funding to the library in this year's budget. Thank you.
Dylan Castle.
Good evening. I guess I'll start with saying, Paul, I support you. And I know that you know that there's a lot of people in Macon County that support you. But I wrote down my thoughts because this is obviously something that's difficult to try and be as clear as possible, because ultimately the truth is what matters in everything that we do. So my main issue with what's going on right now is the fact that taxpayer money is going to promote so openly and directly to children the LGBT agenda. Now, many issues...
Sure. We're gonna respect civil discourse in this room tonight. Everybody's going to have ample opportunity to speak. Please remain silent. Everybody finish their testimony. We'll have, again, everybody will have their opportunity to speak. Thank you.
There's a lot of issues that are facing our county, and a lot of these issues obviously need money, and I believe that they are far more important. Again, the direct attempt to target children with this philosophy, this worldview, this lifestyle, and I don't believe is right, because parents have the final authority in exposing or not exposing their children to anything of this nature. And so, equality is a lot of times what is asked for and what is paraded. But I've often seen, and to anybody who is truthful in their observations, they'll see that equality is often one-sided. For example, as far as I understand, I haven't seen a month for God. I've not seen parades for God or Christianity. I've not seen taxpayer funding for Bibles. I've not seen taxpayer funding for Christian education. In fact, my parents paid taxes for public school, but then had to pay extra money to give me a Christian education. I don't see where prayer is in school much anymore. Maybe in small cases with the right kind of teacher or right kind of influence, but nationally this is understood. I don't see the Bible in school. I don't see God in school. And so when I look at equality, I'm not actually seeing equality. I'm seeing something that is one-sided. Now, just to be abundantly clear, I have no issue with putting God and the LGBTQ agenda on equal playing field, but that's not what's happening. There's preference being given here. So this is not just a local consensus. This is also nationally as well. We've seen this come up, and unfortunately now it's reached us. It's actually reached us for a while, but now it's becoming a bigger issue, a more public issue. I'm also standing here not only in front of men of faith, but as a man of faith. God's word is very clear. In the beginning, he created male and female. Later on, when Jesus was here in Matthew, he talks about how whosoever shall offend one of these little ones, specifically talking about children, which believe in me, it were better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck and that he were drowned in the depth of the sea. Now I know when you hear that, immediately all you hear is the violent end of that verse. But understand what Jesus is saying. He's saying, if you are a person who deliberately misleads a child into falsehood or something that is dangerous to them, that it were better that this outcome happened to you. Now, Jesus isn't wanting everybody to die. What he's saying is, dealing with children is a serious matter. That's the important part of that verse. I know that an argument that will be made, if not it already has, separation of church and state. Set aside your religious beliefs and govern without them. Well, first of all, separation of church and state was a phrase that is not found in the Constitution, and in fact, modern-day application of it is completely incorrect to its original intent. Our founding fathers have many documents that are littered with the responsibility for religion in America and in its governing principles. It cannot be emphasized too strongly or too often that this great nation was founded not by religionists, but by Christians. Not on religions, but on the gospel of Jesus Christ. For this very reason, peoples of other faiths have been afforded asylum, prosperity, and freedom of worship here. That was Patrick Henry. I assume that there are people from the LGBT community here tonight.
Amen.
And I want you to understand that people of this community are no different than myself or you. They're no different than anyone else. They also were created by God. They are also loved by God. They have also been offered salvation by God. It's a heart issue. It's a faith issue. And God sees all these things the same. God doesn't look at them any differently or with any hate, just like He doesn't look at me any differently or look at me with hate. To you, gentlemen, God has placed you here to be righteous men who lead not with the sway of the current tide. You ought to lead according to His principles. Each one of you will be accountable to God personally, not hiding behind the man next to you. No excuses about how well-meaning you were. The voters will hold you accountable. We want righteous leaders, and we will have righteous leaders.
Leah Gaston.
And my husband and I have been full-time Macon County residents for the past 8 years. And I have been a library advocate for 8 years, bringing my 8-year-old daughter to the library regularly, and a former Macon County foster parent. Each of you is aware of the recent controversy at the tax-funded Macon County Library and the danger posed to our community by sexualizing our children. As a parent of an 8-year-old, the sole responsibility to teach my child about matters of sexuality rests upon me and her father. I do not give the library permission to introduce, display, promote, or celebrate topics of sexuality of any type with my child. Not all the books in the displays are as innocent as A Church for All. Books in the teen display glorify and encourage teens to be sexually active with graphic descriptions. I'm concerned that controversial and dangerous sexual trends are becoming more mainstream and being forced into our community against the will of the majority. This should tell us all to pause and reevaluate where society is heading, instead of being apathetic and merely going along to get along. Evil thrives when good people do nothing, and community leaders should be brave enough to take principled stands for the greater good of maintaining morality. While I understand that you as the commissioners have many concerns in running the county, I'd like to kindly remind you that all of us carry the burden of society upon our shoulders. In today's modern age, it is not enough to ride the fence anymore and simply watch events unfold in our culture. Our nation's founders rightly predicted that freedom is only possible with a moral society. This issue of over-sexualizing children and teens arises out of a morally decaying culture. It is your influence as leaders and our principles as a community that set the tone and direction for how we handle these moral conflicts. When children and teens are young and impressionable, they need to be encouraged to seek truth along with their parents' guidance, instead of being tempted to follow a path that leads to darkness, depression, isolation, and even suicide. Can't we all agree to let kids be kids and not pressure them with adult themes, particularly adult themes that are presented attractive to kids? The independent statistics speak for themselves for anyone willing to do his or her own research. I would suggest beginning with the book Irreversible Damage: The Transgender Craze Seducing Our Daughters by investigative journalist Abigail Schreier. It is important to note that these fads are a recent phenomenon that has been encouraged by a polluted culture. None of us like or desire conflict, yet it often takes conflict to wake people up. These days, if society can be convinced that a person simply chooses to be male or female, or that there are more than two genders, society can be convinced of anything. Let that soak in. Society can be fooled to believe any lie by the ruling elite. Just look at the many COVID lies and propaganda that society blindly followed without being capable of critical thinking. That is why it has become necessary for each of us, but especially local leaders, to take a stand on these issues that war against absolute truth. I and many, many others am thankful that Mr. Higdon realizes these things and is willing to take a principled stand to preserve the integrity of our established foundations of truth. There needs to be more like him, willing to take a stand and be a positive influence. Our community is glad that Mr. Higdon was willing to point out the obvious. A tax-funded entity such as the library should remain politically neutral. The vast majority of people in Macon County would also agree. The few who would desire to promote lies to children and teens are the same ones who want to keep prayer out of public schools and censor everything they disagree with. They can't have it both ways. However, countless leaders and ignorant people acquiesce to their demands without blinking an eye. It is time for each of us, especially our community leaders, to resist these cultural Marxists and say enough is enough. Evil thrives when good people do nothing. The vast majority in Macon County want to resist these lies that are being promoted as normal, but most lack the courage because no one wants to feel uncomfortable. Those who love absolute truth need to become comfortable with being uncomfortable. I again thank Mr. Higdon for being an example of what a community leader should be. I hope others will follow his lead and call out the perversions that are destroying our country. Thank you.
All right, Jim Gaston.
My name is Jim Gaston. As always, thank you for the opportunity to come and speak before you in these public situations. While I have no illusions that my 5 minutes will change your mind at this point in the budget discussions, I do hope that these brief comments will possibly influence the conversation on how the public's money is spent moving forward. I grew up on a farm and was taught that prevention is better than the cure. That principle is universal on many different levels, but especially when it comes to economics and spending other people's money. I've been a firefighter, a foster parent, worked for USDA, and my wife that just spoke taught public school for 10 years. I've seen firsthand up close the huge amount of wasteful spending from the public treasury. In each of those examples, money got spent just because it was available. and then it took more money to maintain everything that was bought. I do not support spending more money to grow government on any level because it's never enough. Government's nature is to become bloated with no accountability. Everyone wants their handout for their special projects or pay increases, and the more the public sector grows, the more people want their palm trees. Just look at the number of 501c3s that are always looking for extra money outside the nonprofit funding pool. Don't want to reiterate things that have already been said, so just bear with me. Many people in this county are tapped out and hanging on by a thread, even though the economy is supposedly booming. We saw it booming in 2007 and then saw what happened shortly thereafter. In the private sector, we have to say no all the time. I would like to publicly thank Mr. Higdon and oftentimes Mr. Young for their consistent ability to say no to more spending. Now, I realize that it takes money to keep things going, but there's always a limit to whenever there's public funds involved. It's okay to say no because nobody wants taxes to go up from spending. By the way, great job on putting the sales tax to a referendum. I commend the board for doing that because I think all of us can live with the results whenever the people have a say-so at the ballot. So good job on putting that sales tax to a referendum. And speaking of saying no, it's okay to say no when a government agency creates controversy, no matter who they are. I think people believe we were picking on the library with this issue tonight, but we're not. We're all library advocates. I certainly am. But the issue is not that simple. Someone needs to be handing out stickers that say, support our children, support absolute truth. Because this issue is not about love, tolerance, diversity. It's about children learning the truth. It's also okay to put funding under a microscope when a government agency is celebrating gross misinformation or does not remain politically neutral as a tax-funded entity. Thankfully, most government agencies within Macon County realize the difference between public and private when it comes to promoting biased beliefs. It's okay to say no to extra funds to a public library when they promote and celebrate dangerous themes as if it were normal. I'm sure every agency in Macon County would like to have more money. Many of us support this board keeping the current budget as is, even though I'm a strong library advocate. What I can't understand is why the library would want to create this conflict to begin with over a silly display. They wanted to create this conflict over display because for years the library had a gay display in the adult section and nobody was willing to die on that hill. It was in the adult section for years, no big deal, nobody's going to have a problem with that, but it just wasn't enough. Someone there just had to push it to the children's section for the very first time last year, and then they just had to put gender confusion and all kinds of sexuality stuff in the teen section as if it was normal this year. So the agenda with this movement is never enough. That's why it takes us standing up against it. Even movie theaters have restrictions on what they allow minors to be exposed to. If the library was so concerned about unity, why did they choose to create a conflict they knew that would divide? And changing the subject, I live in Cowee and very much support this board getting the old Cowee school off its books. It is past time to let it be taken over by another entity and let the chips fall where they may. We all love history preservation, but it's not the job of county government. Finally, in closing, there are many, many reasons to be cautious in these uncertain economic times because prevention is better than the cure, and it's always okay to say no.
All right, I think I've got this right. Heather Dombrowski, is that correct? Okay, no problem.
Thank you. I appreciate you.
All right, good evening, y'all. So I have two little ones in this community. We frequent the library a lot, like a lot of parents in this community. And I don't know how often y'all go to the library, but let me just tell you about our library, especially the children's section. Those folks, those librarians in that children's section, they put on programs that would rival, if not trump, children's sections in much larger populated areas. STEM programs, art programs. Today they had the Balsam Trust there with animals. There was over 60 people attending that program. They have teens programs, the adult services that they offer. I've seen tax prep, canning classes, the internet services there. That library is such an asset to this community. Now, I could go on and on about my personal beliefs about that display, but I don't think it's about that. The funding for the library should not be about the display. The funding should not be contingent on personal beliefs. The staff and the librarians passionately make that library what it is, and I feel like to deny them that 3% pay increase, I feel like it's a dereliction of your duty as an elected official of this county. They deserve that. And if they're getting paid as little as $10 an hour to start, and they're passionately putting on the programs that they put on, how dare they not get paid what they're owed? Thank you.
Cayenne Cruz.
Good evening. I'll be quick. I just want to say that I do not agree with withholding the salary increase for the librarians on any premise, but in regards to this being a matter of family values, as a father of 3 children under 10, I just want to say that the values in which I want my children to grow up with are based upon love thy neighbor and loving everybody unconditionally. And I want them to know that America is beautiful because it believes in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness for all. That's all I have.
Hannah Cruz.
My name is Hannah Higbee Cruz. I was born and raised here in Franklin. I've lived here my whole life, and I'm now raising my 3 children here. My 2 oldest attend Iowa Elementary. I grew up within the walls of our town library back when it was located in the center of town in what is now the senior center. I spent a lot of time at the library as a child, so much that most of the librarians knew me by name and always remembered my reading preferences. I can still remember how special I felt when someone on staff went out of their way to set aside new books by my favorite authors for me so I could take them home. I can also specifically remember receiving a huge round of applause the first time my Oregon Trail computer family didn't die of dysentery. To be totally honest and transparent, books and my time at our library saved my life. Something the library staff would never know until right now is that our public library was my refuge and escape from a sexually abusive childhood, despite being brought up in a Christian home and within purity culture. The library staff were not just staff members, they were also my saviors. Today, my own children are always treated just as well as I was at the library. Many of the staff could tell you that they have literally watched my babies grow up. Now, hearing that the staff members of the library might not be getting their well-deserved and much-needed raise shocked me all on its own, but when I heard the reason why, I was heartbroken. My husband and I strive to raise our children to be loving, compassionate, and accepting little humans. And so far, their unconditional love of all others astounds me every day. The 2 of us teach our children that love and family are to be respected in every one of its many forms, no matter what those families look like. That being said, my children are expected to be mature enough to handle the numerous active shooter drills in school every year. Therefore, to me, that makes them mature enough to know whether or not a fellow student might have 2 dads. Just like they understand Just like they understand that within our own family, they have 2 aunts in their family that they love and adore. Our library staff simply did their job to inform the public on what books they have to offer for Pride Month, which is only 1 month. It's a job that they deserve to be paid well for. If you don't like the particular books, don't read them. If you don't want to read them to your children, don't. But I am so proud to read books to my children that help them to better understand the world around them. Books that help them to love and include all humans, no matter who they love. Commissioner Higdon and fellow commissioners, please do the only right thing here and allow the library staff to always be paid what they deserve. And please don't allow your personal feelings or opinions to get in the way of that. Thank you.
Alan Lewis.
Good evening. I don't have any prepared remarks, but I did want to come forward and just speak to what the gentleman earlier alluded to about the library board. And just say that my wife had the privilege to attend. They had public hearing the other day to just get input from the community. Many people spoke on either side of the issue. I think there were probably more that were opposed, but that may have been because not many people knew it was happening. So she felt that her views were able to be heard. The library staff was very courteous, even though she was in opposition to that display. I feel like the library has adjusted its stance somewhat this year. I don't know all the reasons behind that. And I appreciate them being willing to do that and taking kind of a balanced approach. I don't take my children to the library to learn about morals. I take them to church to do that. However, I also stand in opposition to promoting any material of a sexual nature to minors at the public library, regardless of what kind of sexual material that is. I just wanted to make my 2 cents heard. And I support funding the library staff at a reasonable rate.
All right, I'm going to need some help with this one. I believe it's Warren. Last name starts with a B.
Burton Stresser, yes.
Do you mind spelling that for me, Mr. Bergstresser?
B-E-R-G-S-T-R-E-S-S-E-R. Good evening. I was at that meeting the other night where they were talking about the LGBTQ display and everything. It got me wondering, what is a library and what is its purpose? It's a repository of knowledge accrued throughout centuries that is either written or in digital form, and it is typically used for academics for the purpose of gaining study to learn professions, trades, skills, that type of thing. I don't think there's a place for any kind of woke ideology or politics in this. I think it should be neutral. Politics, ideologies, whether it be LGBTQ, CRT, feminism, Black Lives Matter, none of that should be involved in our public arenas. It should be separate. People want to bring politics or this kind of thing out, go ahead and do it. As far as I'm concerned, LGBTQ is pretty much divisive, such as Mr. Higdon said, and it's destructive. I know 3 different kids that went through middle school got into this
and they decided to change their gender and whatnot. Every single one of these kids are in trouble now. They don't get out of the house. They're isolated. They're depressed. They sit in front of the computer 24/7. They don't come out. They lost their friends. They lost everything, and they turn right around and built themselves a hole and throw into it. I think this should be something that should be brought up by the parents. I don't think it's something that our government should be putting in front, whether it be a tax-paid library, whether it be in our schools. None of it should be in there. It should be academics. That is the purpose. And it should stay that way. As far as the small display that they had this year and everything, I think that's great. But as someone up here spoke earlier, it never stops there. It gets more and more and more once it gets put in the door. Now, when will we go ahead and draw the line? When we have a drag queen story hour? Because a lot of these libraries are doing that now across the country. And it's how far it's progressed. Because they won't stop. And it's divisive in the fact that if you don't agree with the ideology, they don't attack your ideology back, they attack you personally. And it's the same with CRT, it's the same with all of them. And it's a divisive tactic, and it's destroying our country. I mean, God, country, and family is what this nation was built on. Well, God was taken out of school about 4 years ago or so. This is destroying the family. And these woke agendas, well, all we need to do is look at the federal government and what we're doing right now, go to the gas station or anywhere else, and we'll see how the woke ideology is really hitting home right now. I think that's working out for everybody in this room, don't you think? So I think we need to kind of get this stuff back out of there and try to get back on track as far as the country, but especially as a community. This community is one of the greatest come-together communities I've ever lived in. When I come here, I lost my wife, I lost my job and everything that I work on. Retired professional land surveyor. When I was down, people I didn't know, I'd never seen before, came out of the woodwork to help me, without me asking for nothing. There's some people that sit right here that I can testify to that have done that. And I want this community to remain like that. I don't want it to get woke. I don't want it to start going off on these ideological tangents. All we have to do is look 1 hour north and see how well that's worked out in that community. Not so well. It's in the top 10 of one of the most dangerous towns in North Carolina, according to an article in 2022. So I think that the only thing that should be done with this is to keep it out, because number one, they're starting to focus on children. You don't have a whole bunch of adults that go in there to read these books. It's all focused towards kids. And kids are malleable. They're impressionable. You get them with bright colors. Hey, look, here's a piece of candy, come here. They're easily misled. And I don't believe that we should perpetuate that in any way, shape, or form through our education in any way. We're publicly funded, and I think that you should have a say in it, not the government. I do have one thing that I wanted to add as far as budget proposal. I think it would be a good idea to possibly take a look at the trends that are going on across the country right now. There's a lot of police departments in the north that are having to restrict patrols because their budget's already out of money because of fuel costs have gone through the roof. And they're having to restrict patrols. They're having to put 2 deputies in 1 car, shut 1 car down. I read about where one said that they can't drive no more than 27 miles a day. They need to drive, park, observe. Drive, park, observe. You need to think about trying to make sure that what's coming on the horizon, and it's coming, that we can go and keep our services going here. And we need to think about doing it now before everything does go south. I thank you for your time and allowing me to come and speak. May God bless America. Thank you.
I believe it's Jared Gant. Is that correct?
Thank you. I'm going to keep it kind of brief here. As several others have pointed out, this isn't really a question of funding at the heart of it. It's a question of punishing people for doing their jobs and doing it well. It's about punishing like they were disobedient children who did something that you disagreed with after you give them the authority to make their own decisions. It's about power, and it's about using your power to silence the narratives and the information that you disagree with, or you find unsavory or repugnant. It's not about political correctness. It's about shutting down access to information and making people feel less than. It's about silencing the voices of those you don't like and making them feel unwelcome in their own communities so you don't have to acknowledge that they exist in the first place. Our library is incredibly fortunate to have the staff that they do. The men and the women of Macon County Library are, without a doubt, changing lives. They provided a welcoming community space for everyone, regardless of race, religion, or orientation. One reason there seems to be an opposition to a pride display at the library is, I believe, pretty simple. Pride as an event is not held in opposition to anyone. It's for everybody. By nature, it is inclusive for people of all backgrounds, all orientations, and all histories. It doesn't seek to eliminate or silence anyone. Historically, people and movements who were opposed to civil rights and acceptance of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people make every effort to silence and marginalize those they disagree with. And pride doesn't do that. In short, it seems like opposition to pride tends to come from a place of hate in the hearts who oppose it, people that are scared, and people who just don't understand. This is what pride seeks to eliminate. It doesn't seek to establish some absurd global hegemony of homosexuals running the world. Pride helps people who are unsure of who they are see that there are safe places and safe people, like our library and our librarians, that can help them navigate their teenage and their young adult years. My 5-year-old daughter, Olivia, is eternally indebted to our library. She spent countless hours there over the past several years, and I cannot overstate the impact that it's had on her life. She looks forward every week to the scavenger hunts, the activities, and the informational displays that rotate with her. This 5-year-old wanted to have her 5th birthday party at the library because she loved it so much. That's the power of a funded library in this community. Hannah talked about the personal touch that the librarians had with her in the 90s, and it still exists. My daughter, every week almost, goes in and gets personalized book picks from the children's librarian staff. She looks forward to bringing them home and spending nights curled up in bed with her mother and I, learning how to read. I'm going to leave you with 3 quotes here, one longer and 2 short. Isaac Asimov, who some of you might be familiar with, was a preeminent science fiction author of our time and a professor of biochemistry at Boston University. He had this to say about library funding. My real education, the superstructure, the details, the true architecture, I got out of a public library. For an impoverished child whose family could not afford to buy books, the library was the open door to wonder and achievement. And I can never be sufficiently grateful that I had the wit to charge through that door and make the most of it. Now when I read constantly about the way in which library funds are cut and cut and cut, I can only think that the door is closing and that American society has found one more way to destroy itself. The second quote is from Walter Cronkite, who is a bastion of impartial news reporting for a generation. He said, "Whatever the cost of our libraries, the price is cheap compared to that of an ignorant nation." And the last one is from John Barry, a modern author. He said, "If your library is not unsafe, it's probably not doing its job." A 3% pay increase for these people that work around the clock, 3% is ridiculous. I get a 6% raise next month, and that won't cover the increase in the cost of living. These librarians have a much harder job than I do. They put much more into their job than I do. They deserve every single penny that you can squeeze out of this budget because they're making differences in the lives of children and young adults and young families in our community. Macon County Library is our third place. We've got home, we've got school, and we've got the library. We don't have family here. We don't really have roots here. The library is one of the main things that has kept us here, especially through my daughter's young age. Thank you for your time. Please follow up.
All right, is there anyone else who would like to address the board regarding our public hearing regarding our fiscal year 22-23 budget?
I would, sir.
You've already been up, Mary Ann.
I know, but I said I had one more.
We give other people a chance first. Come up with the pink shirt in the back. Ma'am, can you say your name for us?
Yes, my name is Heather Johnson.
Heather Johnson? Heather Johnson, I'm
Yes,
sorry.
sir.
Okay.
I apologize about my appearance. I was on my way home. I went by the library to turn in my books that I like to do every few days because I work in a place where I get to listen to books on tape, so I fly through them. So I'll go in there and I'm speaking to the librarian and I was commenting on the changes in time, and I had mentioned, I was like, it's a shame that y'all had to cut your time. And she's like, well, probably, because this was years ago. She's like, well, we'll probably have to cut it a little more after today because we're not even going to get our raise. And I sat and questioned her about it, and that's why I'm here. Because I literally found out today that the librarians were being punished in this way. I am a 7th generation Macon County resident, 5 generations on my property that I live now, and a parent. I have a 10-year-old daughter that up until last year I had to homeschool because of the conditions in this county, in the public schools, the way that they do treat minority people, the way they do treat homosexual people was appalling. I grew up in this town and spent so much of my teenagehood at the library. Me and my friends found that to be a very safe and welcoming space, not only for our education, but for using the internet, for getting information, for being able to collect ourselves and speak with our own group and have a safe place to where we're not getting beat up and chased around the town like me and some of my friends certainly did. It's always been a safe space. And I literally could not even put my child in public school in this town because the library was one of the few safe spaces. So she's been homeschooled up until now. And then I see all these homeschool moms coming in on the library, and I just don't even understand, because that's one of the biggest resources Macon County has for poor people to have access to internet, to have access to periodicals, to have access to books. And the women, some of those women that have been working there worked there when I was younger. And to think that they're not going to get a raise because of something nonsensical like this is utterly preposterous, and it makes me ashamed. And it's very hard for me to try to recommend this town to my friends when this is the garbage that we're having to deal with. I've literally been back there seething. But so I'll just stop it there, but I just don't understand why we have to bring this archaic thought process out and then blame it as if we're protecting children. My daughter does not feel unprotected in the library because of a pride display. She has 2 godmothers who are gay. Nobody cares. And she can read whatever book she wants to read in that library. So, I mean, people are welcome to have their own opinion. These people are parents, blah, blah, blah. That's great. You know what? I'm also a parent. I'm also a Macon County resident. And I support every move that library makes and will continue to do so. And if y'all don't, you're going to keep hearing from people like us. Thank you.
I'm on the list. I know I'm trying to close that up.
We have, are you on the public hearing or the public comment?
I'm trying to talk about the library. That's it. Are y'all trying to
Are
close
you,
that up?
we're in a public hearing regarding our budget. We also have a public comment period coming up. If you want to discuss our budget, I'll switch you over and come on up. It's like the price is right.
All right.
Come on down.
Didn't want to get skipped.
What is your name, and I'll switch you over.
My name is Megan Hartain. I'll be really quick, I promise.
No problem. You got 5 minutes.
Okay, so when we moved to Franklin, North Carolina a few years back, the library was basically a second home for my children and I. Especially when they were small. The activities that the dedicated employees put together day after day for everyone in the community provided us with numerous experiences that expanded our horizons. The library offers services for community members of all walks of life in Macon County. From children to adults, there are programs centered around community, mental health, education, science, creativity, even agriculture. There's like a community garden that they put together with the children every summer. Basically the list goes on and on. And it also provides internet services for many, many people who are without it here in Macon County still in 2022, unfortunately. And all of this is for free. And all of these services and programs offer support for our entire community, and that includes the LGBTQ plus community, which not only exists in Macon County, but is actively growing. In high school, we had to experience peers who did not have the representation in public places like the library here has put together. And we had to watch these youths suffer in silence, be silenced, and ultimately some of those peers paid the ultimate price due to that silence. They are no longer here. Children. Using a public platform and elected seat to withhold funding for salaries because of personal disagreement with that representation is harmful for the LGBTQ plus community and youths in Macon County. And to essentially punish the hard-working employees of the library that go above and beyond to provide that support, safety, and representation is infuriating, to say the least. Mr. Higdon, your stance speaks volumes to the surrounding communities and to our state. We hear you, and it's very shameful. I am not the best public speaker, but I wanted to show up tonight with my 3 children who agree with me and so many of us here to support our library and its employees and to support any and all members of the LGBTQ plus community here in Macon County who are under increasing pressure from those who wish to perpetuate silence. And I'm here to call out ignorance and hate when I see it. Thank you.
In the back. Your name, please.
My name is Alina Romanchuk, and I was on the list.
Okay, you're on the public comment list.
I did ask for which one to sign up, and that one was given to me.
That's fine. We'll let you speak on this one. That's great, Alina.
All right, so thank you so much for this public hearing. I really appreciate that. And I would like to support our public library. And also not a great public speaker, I'm sorry about that, but let's move on. I would like to say that denying the budget to the public is an attempt of censorship. And it is not only immoral, like we just discussed, it's also illegal. Supreme Court ruled that viewpoint discrimination violates the First Amendment. Also, removal of such books simply because officials disagree with LGBTQ plus social issues is breaking the law. Also, on the safety part, library is a safe public space and also funded by public, so it should serve the public and every individual in our community, not just a few.
Okay,
thank you. All right. Not just a few.
was different opinions. And also, we're talking about Pride Month, and it just shows the availability of information that Macon County Public Library provides. So it is available for people if you're looking for such information. And then about increasing pay for our library employees. I've heard $10. Have you seen $10 on billboards and fast food places? I feel like it's a fair statement that salaries need to be increased for a livable wage, and it's not over-the-top government spending. And in conclusion, America is about freedom and not about censorship. And I hope we are making the right decisions. And I hope that every member of our community is treated with respect. Thank you.
I'll get to you in the back, I promise. Come on, no, you're good.
Back and forth is aggravating people with that. Yeah, I guess I can try to switch it out.
You can stand there and hold it for them.
I'll just keep it up.
What's your name, please?
Shalimar Anderson. Do you need me to spell it? You good? Yeah, wow. Lots of takes here today, some hot takes. A lot of them have to do with prayer in school, which is not at all what we're talking about today. It's actually not about prayer in school at all.
Analogy.
And it's about the library.
Bear with me.
Sure.
Maybe single word.
How about now?
Thank you, Brian.
So the thing is that I'm not a Christian. I know that's like a terrible thing to say in this country, I guess, or this county, but it is a freedom that I enjoy as a United States citizen, someone who cares about her civic responsibilities and her community very deeply, even without being a believer in Christ. And I don't make a stink every Christmas when the library has a beautiful display of Christmas books or Easter books at Easter time, because we live in a society, and I believe in love and compassion. And so the children in my life learn about those things with an open heart and open mind. It's appalling, the type of rhetoric that we see here today. And as the last presenter pointed out, if you really are worried about money, shouldn't you be concerned about the cost of your bigoted policies, withholding raises, nominal raises, less than a lot of us get in the private sector this year, certainly less than I'm getting this year. When you introduce bigotry into this, you open yourself up for, problems, right? Like, you're our government, represent us. As people have said before, not all of us are Christian. Some of us live differently, but it doesn't make us less than, and it certainly doesn't mean that you can withhold something that is a business decision based on something that is apparently a religious decision? How? I'm not talking about separation of church and state. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about you are, elected to do a job for the entire community. And pretending that having information in our literal information center, like the library is where you go to find information, and our librarians are educated people that can help you. Like, we have books on World War II in the library, but we don't just assume that people are going to go out and be Nazis, and yet. It's an easy decision, 3% raise, 5% raise, whatever it is. It's certainly not something that you can withhold on these grounds. It's appalling, and I wouldn't be surprised if it got picked up in a more national way. by news outlets if you continue to hold on to this. Is this what you want to bring attention to our community for? I'm not sure. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Don Erickson. I live with my wife in Cartugate. I'm here to applaud the library for their having materials and for presenting information, factual information, literary materials on the LGBT issue and other controversial social issues of the times. They provide information that allow us to have dialogues with our children, with our neighbors, so that we can have open and conscientious discussions. I believe that it's through these discussions that we have around the dinner table that are far more important than our learning behind the woodshed or in the back seats of cars. I believe that we are blessed to be in a society where we're not only allowed but encouraged to come to a public forum and voice our different opinions, to participate in the democratic process, making decisions about our community to make it better and stronger. Thank you.
My name is Raylene Dolfer, and I'd like to tell just a little story first because I think it speaks to our community. I'm 56 years old. When I was 16, I had my first experience with a girl that was a lesbian. She was one of my best friends. She said she came home from college and I was saying that she was interested in somebody, and I'm like, oh, what does he look like? Blonde hair, blue eyes, brown hair, what? She goes, oh, no, it's a girl. You know what I said? Okay. Did I turn out gay? No. I'm married. I have a child, and I adopted 3 more. But what shocks me the most is I took a 13-year-old friend, her daughter, to the art store on Main Street. And she was looking around. And I'm like, well, what are you doing? And she goes, that would be a good place to hide. I'm like, from what? And she says, an active shooter. This 13-year-old girl goes into places and looks for a place to hide. And you're afraid a pride display at the library is going to hurt children. I can't even fathom that in America, that in our country, you think a gay or lesbian or anybody from the LGBT community is going to disrupt your child when it's you disrupting them. Thank you.
All right, we're going to, sir, come on.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mike Holland. I'm one of the Hollands here. Probably have relatives in the audience that I don't know. Hello. I'm also a Lefford. My was a Lefford, so I'm a Lefford. Hello, relatives. My husband and I moved here in 2017. I've always spent every summer up here. My Holland side was Assembly of God, Kalaseji, where I was baptized in the river at a young age of 8. My mother's side was Ledford's, and they were Church of God on the other side of town. The old Church of God that now is owned by Noah's Ark, and then they had a new church. So I grew up here every summer, and I grew up in church every summer. And I admire you for your belief. And your belief is strong, and it should be. It's your belief. I taught school as well many years ago, but I had to be in the closet and I couldn't be out as a gay man in Tampa, Florida. But I remember one of the first gay prides that I was able to go to and march in. And this was years ago, and in the audience, the parade route was Ku Klux Klan members that were chanting, hang them and kill them, and that mentality that when we use the word pride now, we have been fighting for pride and for rights and just to be accepted as part of the community for years and years and years. What I wanted to come up here tonight is to say we are part of your community. We are doctors, we are lawyers, there's people over in the hospital staff, there's people probably in every staff area you go to here that are gay. There are teachers. We are among you. We may not agree with politics, we may not agree with religion, but we are among you and we are paying taxes as well. A small little display in that library. I was shocked because I only heard about this yesterday on the news. Thank you to the radio station here in Franklin. I heard about it on the news, and then I went over to the library because we moved here from a much larger town that pride was in the streets and it was part of the businesses, and everybody was involved about accepting this community of people into our community of the greater whole. But here, I want to continue to be a part of this community, but I would hope that we could all, after a night like tonight, realize that we are all a part of this community. There are many gay men and women and some potential children that already know they're gay, because it's not a chosen lifestyle. I didn't choose it. I didn't. And I can still say I'm Christian. I was baptized and I accepted Lord Jesus Christ at 6, 7, 8 years old. So I have that in commonality with you. But you don't get to judge me whether you can say whether I'm Christian or not. But it's not about being a Christian. It's being about accepting that we are a part of your community. And we want to continue being a part of that community in a small little gay pride representation that's being celebrated all over the world about accepting a group of people just as they are. It needs, we need a little bit of work here. Macon County can do better, I do believe. I hope you agree with me.
Ma'am, last one.
John DeVille's out there. John DeVille, he was trying to get up.
I've got John under public comment.
Well, I signed on two of them. I didn't know which one. Wasn't clear on which one to sign, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, would you like to address this? I'll give you the opportunity, Mr. DeVille.
Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, ma'am. Have your name.
My name is Mary Sarosi. I'm fairly new to the community. I was really disappointed for the reason for not attending the library. I love the library. I'm the grandmother of 2 gay children who are wonderful, intelligent, and just an asset to their respective communities. But what I really wanted to do was I wanted to take a quote from one of our senators from New York, Senator Lieu, and he made a statement before Congress, and he said that he wanted to let everyone know what Jesus said about homosexuality.
Mr. Bill? Come on up, John.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, North Carolina General Statute 7B301 states, any person or institution who has cause to suspect that a child under the age of 18 is abused, neglected, or dependent must make a report to the County Department of Social Services. A subsection of that statute states that one of the elements of abuse is, quote, creates or allows to be created serious emotional damage as evidenced by severe anxiety, depression, withdrawal, or aggression against self or others. I lose my teaching license, properly so, if I am found not to comply with that statute. The North Carolina Republican Party has been pushing for a so-called Parent Bill of Rights, which is almost all well and almost all good, as the proposed law merely codifies what is already in statute. For the most part, there is nothing new. For the most part. One of the troubling elements of the bill, House Bill 755, which has now been passed by both chambers in the General Assembly, says, quote, prior to any changes in the name or pronoun used for a student in school records or by school personnel must give notice to the parent of the change. That means if this bill were to become law, I will be compelled to report a student to their parents, and statistically, I would be more likely than not to create a situation where I would be in violation of North Carolina General Statute 7B301, and that I would be subjecting a student to severe emotional anxiety at the hands of their parents and guardians. This is not a hypothetical to me. Early this past January, I received the following email from a student. Hello, Mr. DeVille. I know I already said my name is blank in class, but I felt it would be necessary to give you some more information to help me feel comfortable. I am a transgender student, and I would like to be referred to as a male while being in your class. Example, being called he, etc. However, my father, guardian, is very unsupportive. So if you ever need to contact my father, please refer to me as my legal name, blank, and use she pronouns. Thank you. I'm excited to be attending your class. I will categorically state here that I will comply with North Carolina General Statute 7B301, and I will not comply with House Bill 755 should it become law, because I will not take the chance on placing a student into an abusive situation. Which brings me to Commissioner Higdon's unfortunate comments of June 7th that he made reference to at the Pride display at the Macon County Public Library in response to Commissioner Beal's motion to allocate $20,000 for an increase in library staff pay. Quote, if you want to celebrate divisive things like gay pride or whatever, then do it. But do it on private property, said Macon County Commissioner Paul Higdon. Quote, I cannot support increased funding to an agency with those displays. End quote. I would like to take Commissioner Higdon at his word when he says divisive. While I don't agree with Commissioner Higdon all that often, I've always found him, seen him, heard him to be a man of his word. I have found him to be a man of honor. But in this case, I think he is using the word divisive as a poor substitute to describe a position which he and some of his friends simply disagree. That is how they have landed on the word divisive. Consider two examples. I don't think there can be any dispute that in the fall of 2019, in the spring of 2020, to make Macon County a so-called Second Amendment sanctuary, that issue could have been more divisive. This courtroom that we're sitting in here tonight was literally divided down the middle, with one side of the room for and one side of the room against. The debate raged on for months in this room, paid for with Macon County tax dollars, and commissioners, including Commissioner Higdon, paid for with Macon County tax dollars. But we heard no cries of divisiveness. We heard no complaints about this being time-consuming. We heard no complaints about this being tax dollar-consuming. And this is all the while Chester Jones, who was sitting where Mr. Ridenour is now, a county attorney at the time, repeatedly informed the commissioners that neither they nor the sheriff had the right to abrogate the role of the courts when it came to interpreting the Constitution. The second example comes from the fact that Commissioner Higdon talked about all the cell phones he got. Well, last spring, about a year ago this month, maybe May, many parents and other supporters for increased arts education funding for Macon County schools lobbied Commissioner Higdon by email. And Commissioner Higdon voiced his disgust with that lobbying effort from this county commission dais. Representative democracy does not work when hearts and minds are not only emphatically closed to one position, in fact hostile to those positions, while being wide open to other voices or another position. If Commissioner Higdon is feeling attacked right now, if anybody in this room is feeling attacked right now, if you're feeling unsupported right now, then maybe you can understand, start to understand, what it is to be gay, lesbian, queer, trans in Macon County. Because the members of the Macon County LGBTQ community experience that feeling every day of their lives. It leads the children, and these young people, these older people to ideate and execute acts of self-harm and ideate and sometimes execute suicide. LGBTQ, the number 2 cause of death in this country for people aged 10 to 24 is suicide. LGBTQ community is 4 times more likely to ideate or execute suicide. More than half of the transgender, non-binary youth in this community, in this country, ideate suicide. There is 1 suicide in the LGBTQ community every 45 seconds in this country. Over 60% of LGBTQ children do not have parents who accept their sexual orientation, which is why I would be reluctant to report what a student confides to me. This next point has been made so well tonight, and I feel so glad to hear it. The public library is one of the last public sanctuaries in our country. They are safe harbors. They are a place to affirm those who are otherwise marginalized by society, whether they're persons of color, poor, homeless, or members of the LGBTQ community. For 1 month out of the year, with 1 small display, our public library has that small beacon that our library is such an affirming space, a safe harbor for the LGBTQ community. The staff of our library deserve our respect, our admiration for their acts of courage, their compassion, their affirmation, their support, and their understanding. Commissioner Higdon seeks to penalize them. There's nothing biblical, as the point was so beautifully made, about condemning sexuality. Jesus never spoke to it. Paul spoke to homosexual acts between men, but never about women, and he never spoke to any homosexuality on an ongoing basis. And Paul ain't Jesus. And if you want to go to Leviticus, then we're in the position of having to denounce commingling of different textiles, tattoos, shaving our beards, and going to Red Lobster.
John.
Okay.
I hate to interrupt you. We're at 7.5 minutes now. I'll let you go longer. If you're going to wrap it, if you're going to wrap it up, come on. I want to give you the opportunity to speak, but I want to be fair to everybody else in here too. So.
You said I interrupted you?
No, I interrupted you.
Okay, no,
sorry.
You're good. No. I'm good. I'll stop right there. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thanks. Any questions, comments from the board before I close the public comment period?
We appreciate everybody coming.
Ms. Wallace, I have a couple questions if you don't mind. Carrie? Sure. Do you want to step up or you want to answer from there? Either way, I just want to make sure everybody can hear you.
Hey, Jim, part of my public comment is a part of the library.
Okay.
And she may want to hear what I have to say.
Okay. I've got you down, and I'm sorry about the confusion on these forms tonight. Was there anyone else? Hazel, would you like to speak regarding this? Your name is on the list.
Just the part about the library.
Danny, I think you're on it too. Did you want to speak regarding our budget?
You want me to wait for the public comment?
Hey, it's up to you. Up to you. Okay. Hazel will come on then. Sorry, Karen, I'll get to you in just a second. I also have Narelle. Narelle, did you want to speak regarding public comment or regarding the budget?
Public comment.
Gotcha.
I do.
Sorry. Okay, go ahead.
Public comment as well, but I'll do that shortly. I want to speak on behalf of the library. I go there myself. I take my grandkids there. But I want to tell a story that happened to me yesterday. There's a lot of hate going around. A lot of name callings of Paul Higdon. I can show you proof. I got 150 screenshots Part of them's from WLS, part of them's from the Actual Citizen, part of them's from off the Southern Scoop, part of them's off of the Franklin Press. I can go on. But a lady came around yesterday, and I believe she talked to you today, because she reached out to me this afternoon. The little boy she talked to was my grandson. But we was at the park, she came around, and this lady was, I don't see her in here, but this lady came around to the park and was asking different kids and different parents about what they thought about the library. I don't know if she has anything to do with the library. Well, my 11-year-old grandson was sitting there, and she asked him what did he think about the library. Had he been to the library, which we had just left the library. She said, what'd you think about it? Well, they like the library. She asked him about the display. Point blank, what do you think about that display? Well, my grandson proceeded to tell her, well, ma'am, I don't understand. Why do we celebrate Pride Month the whole month when you do not celebrate Veterans Day, when you do not celebrate Memorial Day? If you put the play up, it's not where you can really see it. Why not do Easter? I'm not telling you to put a cross up there, but you could do Easter for kids. Why not do Christmas? Well, she reached out to me and she talked to this lady. And she reached out to me this afternoon, and they do not do a lot of that. Am I right or wrong?
We do some of that. We do.
Not to the extent to where he was making a comment. I support our library. I use the library. But when you have this much hate going around, and I can tell you, some of these texts is from some of the people that's sitting in this room. It's shameful. You have TikToks going around. You have other memes going around. Well, my kids has that. My grandkids has access to Facebook. And it's shameful that they have to read this stuff. We're supposed to be about love, kindness. Where is the love in this? Where is the love out here? Hating is not going to get them no raise. Do I support the raise? To an extent, yes. I mean, we just gave all county employees a raise. We have to look out for them. They do need to go on. They do need a raise. I couldn't make it on $10 an hour if that's the case. But there's a better way of handling things than doing it through hate. And that's what I've seen this week, is hate. There's a lot of hate out there, a lot of hate mail, a lot of hate comments for Paul's family. It's shameful that it's ended this way. And I am not against how anyone lives their life. That's on them. I have it in my family. I have amazing friends. But we take a stand, and we stand for what we believe in. So Paul, don't feel that you're alone. I voted for you. I'll vote for you again. Now, commissioners' unions are all up. Some unions are up for re-election. And that's what's going to count in November. But do what's right, and I'll speak to you again in a minute on another matter that's not this matter, but you know, I'm just asking you, search your hearts. Do what's right, or do what you feel's right. That's what you need to do. Just do what you feel's right and what's best for the employees at the library.
Okay. Danny, I'm sorry. I know you're signing to speak too soon.
tonight because I wanted to address that article in the Asheville Citizen Times about Commissioner Higdon. And I've listened to what everyone is saying in here, and I have to agree with Hazel. There's so much hate, and at what point do we realize hate's not going to be the answer? Okay, it doesn't make any sense. You know, my name is Danny Antoine. I'm a karate school here, and if anybody knows me really well, they'll understand that my wife and I, when we love really hard. I have my Christian beliefs, I have my Christian convictions. But I do have a problem with the fact that if I have a belief or a conviction, it automatically is assumed that I hate somebody because of my belief. I love everyone. I don't have a golden rule. Even as I am a pastor, I don't have a golden rule in my karate school that says, if you're not a Christian, don't apply here. Everyone gets a seat at the table. Everyone. Jesus Christ has been grossly misrepresented here tonight. Grossly misrepresented. You know, I wrote down what I really wanted to say, and I'm just going to read this, and I'm going to leave it at that. But I just really pray that we get to a place of understanding once again, hate is not going to get anyone what they want. It doesn't make sense. I have over 200 students at the karate school. A lot of my karate babies that are constantly looking at my wife and I to fight for them. That's exactly what I'm going to do. It doesn't matter to me whether anybody is in agreement with me or not, because it's their lives that I'm fighting for.
That's right.
That's what matters to me. And my prayer is that even after I read this, is that everybody understands my heart and the heart of so many people who've been up here to really represent what they really feel and what they actually believe. Yesterday I read an article, a shameful article in the Asheville Citizen Times about Commissioner Higdon and his stance last week concerning a public display for the LGBTQ community at the Macon County Public Library. How are we okay with demonizing a county commissioner for standing for his spiritual beliefs, but it's okay for everyone else to voice their beliefs, whatever they may be? We live in a free country where every man, woman, or child are free to voice how they feel. This is the greatest country in the world, and it's about time we start acting like it before we lose it to all but nothing but pure nonsense. I'm tired of Christian beliefs and morals constantly being under fire, yet all of the worldviews are deemed acceptable. We remove prayer and Jesus from schools, yet all of the worldviews or customs are accepted. Well, if you remove Jesus Christ, then why not remove everything else at the same time? If it's good for one, it ought to be good for the other. When do we come to a place in this country where differing opinions automatically means hate? How weak of a people do we have to be at the thought process now that if I differ in my opinion from you, that automatically means that I hate you? When do we cross that threshold in this country?
That's right. Amen.
Allow me to share some things to provoke more thoughts on this. My Jesus, whom I worship and stand for, teaches us to love everyone. Meet people where they're at and love people right where they're at. However, me loving you doesn't mean I'm always in agreement with you. And if I disagree with you, it does not remove an ounce of my love for you, not one bit. I got a ton of karate babies at my karate school that bring me all kinds of nonsense all day long. My love for them will never change. The only way it'll change is just going to grow more and more. They all know that. Ask any one of them. Over the years, I've had family members and friends who are part of the LGBT community. They know where I stand, and I know where they stand, and yet that never prevented me from serving them to the fullest. I've always heard all about how people force their views on their religious views on us and our children. Please tell me, the way we're doing with this whole LGBTQ community right now, is that not doing the same thing?
Yep.
So it's okay for one side to do it, but the other side can't. How is that right? I think the article written in the Asheville Citizen Times was shameful against a man who loves and serves the people of our community. I simply couldn't be quiet on this matter any longer. Here's a new term. Because in the article, the famous term was again brought up, homophobia. How about Christian phobia? Do we ever hear about that? Who will stand on this side of history right now with me? I stand for Jesus Christ because he died for us even though we rejected him. Far be it from me that I would seek out public office and deny him simply to occupy a position. I stand for what I stand for no matter what, and that never prevents me from serving people all around me to the absolute max. And I'm simply tired of that coming into question by insecure people who cannot see past their own opinions. I do intend to bring godly qualities back into government if elected in November. Yes, I can do that without alienating not one person. Behind every question, there's a person. Behind every comment, there's still a person. I think we need to get to a place of realizing that. I'm going to say that again. Behind every question, there's still a person, whether you agree with it or not. Behind every comment, there's still a human being there. My wife and I were having lunch in Highlands a couple days ago, and the waiter came and parked at our table because he was so excited about me running for office. And he said something really important to me. And he said, you know, I'm excited for you to get there because you're going to bring an element that's been missing in government for a long time. That's the element of love. I said the second thing that goes right after love is humanity, because when you lose love, you lose the understanding of these are people, and as public servants, we're there to serve people. We lost that a long time ago. Finally, Christians, it's time to stand and be vocal as well. He died for us. At what point do we stand for him?
Great political speech there, buddy.
All right, Kara, finally my question. There's obviously been a lot of comments tonight regarding the library, and I think a lot of probably correct information, probably a lot of misinformation. So I kind of want to get to the heart of it so I have a little better understanding. And maybe I should have done my homework a little bit better before I came in here and I could have answered this, but sometimes when we hear testimony in here, my mind clicks and I start thinking of things. How many employees do we have, not in Fontana Regional, but in Macon County, the library system right now? Not volunteers. How many people are we actually paying?
There are 27.
Okay, 27.
There are 20 at the library in Franklin. There are 5 in Highlands and 2 in the Nantahala community. They are not all full-time, but we have that many bodies.
Okay. Well, I guess where I'm going with this, Karen, just correct me if I'm wrong. The county manager's recommended budget had approximately a $52,000 increase.
Correct.
And I've heard tonight that we're not giving them any increase. So if we give, I mean, I've heard that testimony tonight that we might not be given any funds. So if we give you $52,000 additional dollars over and above, which would take us to $1,101,860 appropriation, will the majority of that go towards your salaries? Or what? I mean, I understand that we're going through inflation. I understand there's expenses, but where will the majority of that be used?
Some of it will go towards employees. Some of it will go towards health insurance increases. Some of it will go towards costs for expenses for operating the library, the cost of purchasing materials, the cost of driving materials to other libraries. So operating costs in general, everything is going up, all our contracts go up. So we're simply trying to keep pace with inflation.
Yep.
So our request was very close to the inflationary increase over the past year. And as Mr. Dyer pointed out, we've not received inflationary increases over the past 10 years. And it's becoming more and more difficult to operate. And as I know you all know, and was brought up at the budget work session, is that if you don't increase the pay for your employees, you are likely not going to be able to keep them. And you heard a lot of people talk about the employees and the difference that they make in people's lives. And that doesn't come easily if someone hasn't dedicated their life to working in the library. I have been here 30 years, and I've dedicated my life to this library. And we have other employees who are in a similar situation. And to not be able to reward them for the work that they do for the people of this county is very frustrating. So yes, we will dedicate as much of the increase that we receive to helping increase the wages for our employees. But we do have other expenses we have to pay as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Hickman?
How was your state funding allocation this year?
We've not been notified of any change in our state funding. It's been flat or decrease. We had a slight decrease in the current fiscal year, but we don't know what the allocation will be in the coming fiscal year.
And the primary purpose of state funding to the Fontana Regional Library is what?
So regions were formed by the state government in a way that they hoped 70 and 80 years ago would equalize library service to people in rural communities. When you look at larger communities, the libraries that could be supported with the population that those communities have far exceeded what rural communities could do. So the legislature formed regional library systems in rural areas to help equalize service and do give us some additional funding for being a regional library system.
Primarily in our memorandum of understanding, state funds were designated primarily for staff salaries. Is that right? Are you familiar with it?
Yes, I'm very familiar with the agreement. Thank you. And they do pay for some state salaries, for regional salaries.
And let me tell you, I appreciate you, the library out there is talking about. A lot of these people have spoken tonight, don't know me. They were at another meeting, or they were getting their information from somewhere else other than my statements. They distorted everything I said. I appreciate what you've done. For you and I, we've tugged and we've wrestled budget issues many times, but never have I said we're cutting funding for library staff. What a moronic interpretation of a statement I made. And, and people driving an agenda. That library, I had the pleasure of walking through it again with a friend of mine the other day. He was absolutely amazed. I mean, you look at this thing. It's amazing. And
I agree.
And
it's an amazing place.
You're the Fontana Regional Library Director.
That's correct.
And you're over how many libraries? 6. You don't specifically work for Macon County. You kind of hang out here because it's the best thing we got.
I like to hang out here.
I thank you. And an insult from these people who have no clue what I said to say that I want to cut library salaries. That's moronic. That's an insult. We had a discussion here. The initial request, I think the library, I think y'all requested about 100. Your request was about 150,000, 10%?
It was about 108,000, I believe.
10%, yeah, 10%.
Correct.
And I think the library liaison, Mr. Bill, brought to the board a $100,000 increase.
No, 20,000.
No.
Over but what we had.
Initial suggestion, I know that the initial request you made was for 100.
Well, to the county manager from the library board, yeah.
Correct, based on our proposal and our discussions in our library board meetings.
And that was whittled down to $52,000 as recommended by the administration.
Yes.
The other night, our discussion was increasing that funding to about $72,000. And we were simply having a discussion about library operations. And that's what our money, we don't designate, we don't line item our contributions to the Fontana Regional Library. We don't give you $20,000 and say, go pay your staff more money. We write a check 12 times a year to the Fontana Regional Library, and you, as a regional librarian, you delegate where that money goes.
That's correct.
And
under the auspices of the Fontana Regional Library Board.
Exactly, which is addressed in our regional memorandum of understanding.
Correct.
So for people to imply that we sit up here and discussed library salaries, I know where that came from, but we did not. We were talking about contributions, operational expenses to the Fontana Regional Library. If you have a flaw in one of your 3 branches, our money could go to another community, another county, according to the memorandum of understanding. It may not happen, and I know you're pretty diligent on keeping the money here. We don't talk about salaries. We don't talk about line items. We write you one check every month.
That's true.
So I don't know what this thing about me wanting to cut salaries. That's not within my authority. That is your battle rat. The salaries is yours.
And our request was to try to keep pace with inflation, which I think you all recognize has been huge this year. We're at 8.6% inflation at my last check. So without an increase of that keeps pace with inflation, we don't have the funds to stay where we were the previous year. And this year has just been so big an increase in inflation that our goal was to ask our county to help us keep pace with inflation so that we could continue to pay our staff and meet our obligations in our operating budget.
I don't mean to get ahead of myself because I look prepared statements making that, but since you're here, you're the authority on libraries. You've dedicated your life to this, and you've built Macon County Library. I mean, that's yours. And
not by myself, but no.
Well, you steered the ship. I know how dominant you are. You have the best ideas, and Bill Dyer probably agree with me on that. We thank you. Now, there's one issue, and all we get is a report, an annual audit of the Montana Regional Library. We don't get a monthly report that you spent this money on this or that money on that. So within annual audit, that's what we look at to see how the Montana Regional Library is doing. And last year they increased their fund balance by $280,000 for a total of $2.1 million in fund balance. What are the plans for that? Why was some of that $280,000 not targeted for salaries?
Some of the money was received for grants, which have specific purposes, and it doesn't include salaries for employees who are employed at the library now.
How much of that fund balance is designated? I mean, is it?
So the grants that we received last year were in direct response to the COVID dollars that came down. So we had funding available for purchase of equipment, largely technology, to make available for people to use. We expanded our Wi-Fi network. We check out hotspots, and those have an ongoing expense to people who don't have access to internet. We have other devices that we purchased for children to use that give them a sense of digital literacy without having to be connected to the internet. So many of the expenses that showed up there were for specific purposes for grants that have obligated expenses that we have to make.
Could some of that money be used for salary increases?
No, it may not.
None of the
grants that we received.
Fund balance?
No.
None of your 2.1 million can be used for pay.
So we need to be able to sustain our operating costs without the fund balance that exists. And I'm sure Mr. Rowland is very aware of the importance of a fund balance to pay for future needs. And that's exactly one of the reasons that we have a fund balance. But it doesn't pay for operating costs.
Any further questions? Thank you. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Karen.
Appreciate it.
Before I close the public hearing on the budget, besides the library, there's a whole heap of a lot of other departments that this county handles, including looks like a $10.3 million allocation to education. Anything else? Any other questions publicly before we close? We'll close the public session. Mr. Attorney, I think you had some comments for us.
Yes, thank you.
Do you mind setting the speaker over so everybody Let's stand. while the room's clearing out, let's stand in recess for 3 minutes.
No, 20,000 above 52.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you. All right, Mr. Attorney, sorry for the interruption there. Let's.
Thank you, Chairman Tate. Thank you. This working?
No, it's not on.
Here, you got to flip the switch on. Here, get up here. That one, just for recording, Derek. He'll have to plug it into the other one. All this.
You want to go up to the podium?
Right. So the state legislature passed a statute.
You don't hear back there?
This fiscal year. Can you hear me?
Can you hear?
The state legislature passed a statute that became effective this fiscal year, and it says that county commissioners who likewise serve on a board of a nonprofit cannot vote to appropriate money to that nonprofit. So Derek and Lori made a list of those nonprofits that are in the budget, and if you're a liaison, that's okay, but if you're on the board of these, then we'll have to do a separate budget amendment for those specific nonprofits that appear in the budget. The 8 nonprofits that are funded in this budget are No Wrong Door, Macon County Historical Society, Scaly Mountain Historical Society, State of Franklin, WNC Communities, Macon Citizens Abilities, Macon Programs for Progress, and Macon County Community Development Council. So if any commissioners or actual voting board members on those nonprofits, please so state. Otherwise, the budget should be good to go as planned.
One matter of correction, I stated the change we made at last meeting was an increase to the Forest Service for $8,490. It is $8,098.
Mr. Manager, Commissioner Bill and I are both liaisons to MPP. I don't know if we're voting board members or not.
We are not.
Liaison would not count.
Okay.
And I'm also not a voting member at No Wrong Door.
Then it would not count.
Do you have to be a voting member?
Yeah.
Might not have any then.
I don't have any.
Okay. Any other comments regarding the budget or questions? Or Chair will entertain a motion to approve the budget as presented by the county manager with the noted change regarding the Forest Service. Crickets.
You just put the comments in. Just wait a
Is it for a motion?
I would love a motion. Take us in some direction. Anybody or have some type of recommendation on the way they want to go?
Mr. Chairman, I'd be glad to make a motion that we adopt the budget with the changes as stipulated for the 22-23 year budget year. And thank our county manager and Lori for all the work they've done. This discussion tonight, you know, would I like to see the library have some more money? Yes. But if that's not the will of the board, we certainly need a budget. So I think we have a good budget. It confronts the things that will continue to improve the quality of life for our Macon County citizens. So with that, I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman.
All right.
I'll second, Mr. Chairman.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Bill, second by Commissioner Shields to approve the county manager's recommended fiscal year 22-23 budget. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye and raising your hand.
Aye.
Have a comment.
Go ahead.
Maybe the stand. You don't mind him. I do thank each of y'all coming tonight. I've been the one taking a hit up here.
Lean in a little closer to it there.
Thank each of you for coming tonight. Witness your elected leaders at work and to provide input on how our tax dollars are spent, how your tax dollars are spent. I've been encouraged to better explain my positions when voting on issues that come before this Board of Commissioners. And tonight, we're going to be voting on a $59 million county budget. I don't like reading to you, but this printed statement regarding this year's budget negotiations will hopefully explain my position and also prevent reporters from distorting my statements, as has happened over the past few days. From our last meeting about me wanting to reduce the salaries of our local library staff, when I never mentioned salaries in any of that discussion. Been accused of expressing my personal opinion. I've sat here and took the hits of a lot of personal opinions tonight, and that's okay. But this statement is my personal position. I've not shared it with any of these other board members or anybody else. And any distortion of this statement in printed form or social media is unacceptable. I will read slowly and clearly for the benefit of the media and have autographed copies of this position statement available. As to drafting this year's budget, this board directed the county manager, the finance director, and their budget team to present us a draft budget without any tax increase. And I thank each of them for the many hours they put into accomplishing this. I have stated that I would not support any new tax increases, as I think our local government has adequate funds to provide high levels of service to our constituents. I do have some disagreements on some budget items, but I also realize I'm in the minority, and this budget will pass as proposed. This board spent over an hour at our last meeting publicly debating and analyzing some $200,000 to $300,000 fire department budget increases in less than 30 minutes on a $59 million budget. In our current economic conditions, where many people are having to make serious financial adjustments just to make ends meet, I can't support increasing the budget $2.3 million over last year. I cannot support any fire tax increase that will be approved for some volunteer fire departments, nor a 4.5% salary increase to county staff. I think that's excessive. This board strongly supports our county employees and their public service, as evidenced with a pay increase last year of over $9 million, which was supposed to make us competitive. We provide a healthy benefit package, and salaries will be increased this year by an average of 4.5% to 4.7%. Annually, 4% of our budget, or $2.5 million, is spent on retirement pensions. Each employee gets a 1% Christmas bonus. And to my knowledge, no county employee lost 1 penny of salary or any sick leave during the recent pandemic, while many individuals and small businesses in the private sector struggle to survive financially, and many didn't. We spoke to this before, but included in this budget is a proposed $52,000 increase to the Fontana Regional Library for a total of $1.1 million to fund operations of our 3 county libraries through the Fontana Regional Library system. I think the initial request by Commissioner Bill was $100,000. We've been into that. Some of this is repetitive, but bear with me. In addition to this library funding, we provide the buildings and maintenance, the utilities, the solid waste fees, and ground maintenance, and have designated, pardon?
Not the solid waste fees. We pay for our garbage disposal.
And for your telephone.
And we pay for our telephone.
Yes. It's not reflected in the agreement. We need to button that up. My apologies. I'm glad you're here. I'll redact that. We pay for the buildings and the maintenance of those buildings in Macon County. We pay for ground maintenance. We pay for utilities. And you pay for the solid waste fees and for the telephones. And I guess the internet, all that, all the technical, whatever all it is. We've also designated $500,000 to build or improve a library building in Nantahala with a community center. It'll be a library community building. But we've set aside $500,000 for that. Yeah, and we'll discuss that a little bit later. There are two reasons I cannot support the proposed increase. And I thank Karen for standing there and explaining this to me and to other people too. Number one is the fund balance. It was my understanding that once you got grants for operating expenses, that freed up the local contributions for operation expenses such as salaries. That's a point we can discuss. But this board does not allocate money specifically designed for salaries. Bear with me. And just for amounts, how much do we give the library? How much do we allocate to the library? Our Macon County's contribution is 1.86% of our budget. Jackson County's is 1.69% of their budget, but they got an $82 million budget and we got a $59 million budget. So Jackson County's contributions, and they have 3 libraries too, I think. How many? 2? So Jackson County does get a larger dollar amount. I'm not going to repeat all that. This memorandum of understanding between the Fontana Regional Library, which is made up of Macon, Jackson, and Swain counties. It's in essence, it's an authority, and we give the Fontana Regional Library authority to manage our 3 libraries in Macon County, and they do a super job. I mean, there ain't no doubt about that. But that memorandum of understanding comes up for review and discussion in December or January of 2022. And if Karen's still here, she's threatened to leave. We want to have this healthy discussion. I think we can fine tune that a lot about salaries, etc. There's some things. It comes up for review with the Fontana Regional Library Board and whatever board setting here in December of 2022. Obviously going to be a different makeup. Secondly, I stated that I could not support any increase in public funding to assist in a gay pride display in the teen section of the library, which is public property funded by taxpayers. The display should be moved onto private property and funded with private donations. There is no hate in that statement, as I have friends and family members and business associates who are gay, and we have a good relationship without politicizing our views or lifestyles. If you support the gay pride movement, that's your right. And as a military veteran, I served this great country to guarantee you that right, and I will continue to do so as long as I live. With that service, I am also granted the right to respectfully disagree with opposing views, with the key word being respectful. And I've seen an absence of some of that here tonight, but I'm a big boy and I can take it. I am straight. I'm a Christian. But I don't expect a month-long celebration of either one, because I'm not seeking approval of man, just God. On display last year, and the book's been discussed, was a book in the library section entitled A Church for All. Regardless of content, it's the heading. To me, advertising a church on public property, regardless of the content, does breach the establishment clause that's somehow been worked into our Constitution. If I put up a banner that said "A Christian Church for All" display with Christian-themed books, it would certainly cause an uproar. The secular left has worked for years to remove any mention of God from schools, any mention of God or church from schools and public venues, but yet want to bring it back under the gay pride celebration. When God is removed from any facet of our lives, love leaves also, and confusion enters. Sexuality and gender identification topics should be reserved for parents and not openly displayed with free comic books to a targeted audience on any public property, specific to the children or teen section of our library. Our role as commissioners is to set the tone and direction of this county for all citizens by providing neutral, safe, and welcoming environments for all users. In my opinion, this display does not meet that criteria, and I cannot support this funding proposal. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield the floor.
I wanted to also address this board during the budget session here. I want to take a business approach to our budget, and I feel like government is very ineffective with their money. If this were the private sector, we likely go out of business, and we would have been out of business a long time ago. I strive to be transparent. I strive to be consistent, and more importantly, I try to be prepared across the board, all departments, all fire departments. And initially, when Derek presented this budget, I really had no hard feelings with it. I kind of told Derek, you know, I was for the majority in support of the budget. But whenever I had all the fire departments come forward, and two of them I supported rate increases, and two of them I did. But I look at the departments, and it's this board that holds them accountable. And I made a couple comments about, you know, why don't you come every year and ask for an increase? Why don't you come every year and ask for an increase? And I sit on this board and I look at what we're doing. And I struggle all weekend. I thought about that. I thought about Colby Anderson and the time, the volunteers they put into that department. And they're dedicated. They come before this board, and I denied that. And I struggle with that. You know, you can't govern on emotions. I have to run this like a business. And I look at the budgets, I look at the numbers, and that's essentially what's happening with our budget over time. And really, what do we have to show for it? And so I want to prioritize our funding. I'm excited about some of the schools and some of the, you know, the big steps this community's taking. And I see Jack out there. You know, the town of Franklin's got a really cool, iconic, you know, hotel moving to Franklin. So there's some really good things happening, but what is the big picture, and what's our, you know, as we're increasing our budget, what are we really having to show for it? Our fund balance is still extremely high, and I know we have, you know, appropriated some funds, and we plan on using that. But at the end of the day, our budget grew by a couple $1 million, and I had to hold us fire departments accountable. I feel like it's my job to hold this board accountable, and it's not an emotional decision. To me, it's business, and I appreciate all the effort the county put into this. I really do. I think they've done a great job, Lori, there. But
Commissioner, I'm going to ask you a question. So what recommendation do you have if you want to cut the budget by $2 million? What do you recommend we do? Because I haven't heard this until tonight.
No, and I've struggled with this. So I think a lot of our nonprofits shouldn't be funded by taxpayer dollars. I think a lot of our expenses...
$75,000.
I think a lot of our expenses coming out of this budget should come out of the fund balance. I think we have 35... I hear that every day. I hear it every month. We have $30+ million sitting in an account unaccounted for, and we keep raising the budget. So I feel like once that's kind of appropriated, if we're treading water and our nose is right above, you know, right underneath the surface of the water, I feel like at that point we need to adjust our rate increase or adjust our budget. But right now we have the money sitting in the savings account. I do understand, look at the cost of business is going to go up, and I feel like the emergency medical center, and the gentleman pointed out the point of fuel for the EMS and the sheriff's department, that's going to rise. At this point, I'm having a little bit of heartburn.
Sure, well, I'm not disagreeing with you. I don't think anybody in here has any issue. It's just the first I've heard about you want to make an adjustment to the budget. So my question is you would prefer to pull some out of fund balance, you prefer to make some changes, so you suggestion we make a tax decrease and we reduce the budget overall, and I guess if we were moving nonprofits, that's $75,000 out of $2 million.
Well, that's not all nonprofits in our budget, if I'm mistaken, according to what I saw.
State of Franklin, okay, yeah, okay. But I guess I missed what you're coming from.
Mr. Chairman, this is what you got to remember about the fund balance. The fund balance is our seed corn. 25% of that was set by, the state says we must maintain 8% fund balance. 25% was done by a board many, many decades ago, before this board ever existed, of what the county. And we can rescind that and go back to 8% if you'd like, but I certainly wouldn't recommend it. So you take whatever we got, 30 million, you take 25% off of that, that can never be touched unless this board rescinds it and goes back to 8%. So with the remainder of that, let me just recall a couple of instances. Jack Orton is sitting here, was county manager. Recall Peaks Creek. We outlaid $11 million when the Peaks Creek disaster took place. It took us 12 years to get that money back from the federal government. Had we not had a strong fund balance at that time, we would not have had it. Now, I've said on this board in times we had to dip into the fund balance to balance the budget. So we have to be very careful with our fund balance. That's our savings account. When you start spending your fund balance for reoccurring costs, you will go broke, period.
To your point,
so
$35 million in fund balance, 25%, $9 million.
Right.
So surplus of
so that gives you, for a growing county like ours, a progressive growing county, I think that's a fair fund balance, and wish we could put more into it, because that's our savings account. That's the citizens' savings account, not this board's, but the citizens of Macon County savings account. And if something should happen, if we need an emergency money, that's where we have it. That's the reason we have a AA tax rating. That's the reason we can go Lori can go to the market and get the best ratings on the things we've built for schools over the past year. For every project we've done, we've always had a great tax rating. Why? Because we've managed our money pretty well. We've always had a fund balance. We've always continued to improve. The Sheriff's Department, you hear look at the Sheriff's budget over the past 16 years that I've been liaison to the Sheriff's Department. As Sheriff-elect Holbrooks takes over, he will have to tackle a new budget in the coming year of next year, and there are going to be some questions to ask about that. And the EMS continues to set records every month for calls to respond to our citizens. So if you start tinkering with the fund balance and spending it for reoccurring costs, before long, you won't have no fund balance. And I think they're for one-time expenditures, and we have some of those coming up, Commissioner Young, that I think is very ideal for that. That we don't have to go out into the loan market. We can spend for one-time expenses. But when you start cutting the budget and talking about reoccurring costs, and as far as these nonprofits probably save this county millions of dollars overall because of the volunteerism and what they do. And if you take all the nonprofits, now the town, in their judgment, did that. If you take all the nonprofits and how the services they provide to the citizens of this county, and the county have to pick that up in their budget, it would certainly dissipate whatever we're spending for nonprofits, the $75,000, and there are a couple of others there. So overall, I think that the citizens of this county should be proud to have a budget and to have a fund balance. And if you start tinkering with your savings account, you won't have a savings account for long. So just want to make some clarification, maybe some educational points.
No,
thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And I'll get off this horse, but I feel like it's the clubs, maybe some churches, other foundations. It's their job to fund a lot of nonprofits. As far as taxpayers, there's so many nonprofits out there, we pick and choose. I mean, I recall the sheet that was presented, we literally handed them more money than they asked for, and other nonprofits didn't get the funding they requested. And I feel like if we're going to sit here and just randomly throw out money, let's find a better.
Well, let me correct you, it wasn't randomly thrown out. We had a committee that was set up by this board to review each application to go to the community funding pool. Those applications were processed through citizens that we appointed to this board and made recommendations to this board. So if they if they didn't qualify for some reason, we trust that committee, or we might as well do away with it. We trust their judgment and how they proceeded to present that to this board. So that's how that works.
Well, Karen is the head of that. She done a good job administering that. But they spend many hours divvying up $75,000, and then we come along and dropped $70,000 at a nonprofit at the county school building. We do that, the board. So is that good management?
Well, we own the building.
It's a nonprofit.
The county owns the building.
It's set up as a 501c3.
We own the school building as long as they're in debt. Same thing. We own the building. You got to maintain what you own. Just like having your house. You want to maintain your house.
National.
No difference.
Guard Armory.
Yeah, the National, yeah. Perfect example. The National Guard Armory, that was a gift to us. We're going to invest a whole bunch of money in it.
Definitions of funding related to charities and nonprofits. I think we can wiggle it around either way.
No, it ain't no wiggling around. We own the building. You got to maintain it. Simple.
All right.
The joy of being chairman is it's up to me to try and wrangle 3 votes to hopefully get a budget passed. And I've heard some differences of opinions here. It kind of reminds me of, this could get really philosophical here, but it reminds me of spaghetti sauce. Spaghetti sauce. All 5 of us up here have a different recipe of what we would like. All 5 of them are different. All 5 of them have different ingredients, but it's my goal as chairman to try and find some type of spaghetti sauce that 3 of us can find appetizing so we can get a budget passed.
That's good. That's good.
So what I was asking Commissioner Young is the first I'd heard from him that he might not be in support of the budget, and I was just trying to learn, prompted my question is I was wanting to understand. I've heard a couple comments there on what he wanted to change, but so do we put that additional funding into fund balance? I mean, we have projected revenues from our budget staff of what we're bringing in, or do you want a tax decrease, or what do you? I don't understand. I guess I'm not comprehending 100% what you're after. I hear some things that you have some heartburn on. I'm not understanding what you want to do. You mentioned having a high fund balance, so do we take that extra revenue and put it into fund balance, or are you looking at the taxes?
I would support holding our budget neutral.
Okay, now I got you. I got you. I'm not disagreeing with you, I'm just trying to clarify.
No, and against accountability, I don't want to be a hypocrite to volunteer fire departments, period. Okay. Accountability.
Okay, I hear you, loud and clear.
Mr. Chairman, can I say one thing?
Yes, sir.
I'm not saying a lot on this because we got a project, the Franklin High School project, that's going to depend upon a strong fund balance for our borrowing, whatever we have to do. Working through this Franklin High School facility assessment is going to take some time. The board members tonight, we received a portion of this study, and you haven't had time to look at it. It pertains to renovation. We will be going through some more meetings in June and also in July. But to me, I think a strong fund balance needs to stay at hand, because we do not know what's going to happen right here in this facility assessment process. And say that what you've received tonight is about renovation, and I said I'd be glad to sit down with you and go through the meat of it, but we haven't gone into the new part of Franklin High School yet, and that's going to start June the 30th, 29th, I believe. And so that is my reason for maintaining a strong fund balance, because we do not know what we're going to run into when we get into this. But we're only about halfway through it.
All right.
Call the question, Mr.
Any other comments? I'm hoping we get 3 votes. If not, I don't know what we're going to do. All in favor of the budget as presented, please signify by saying aye and raising your right hand.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? I'll let the record reflect a 3-2 vote. Thank you. Moving on to the next item, we're going to open the public hearing for the extension and modification of the exclusive franchise agreement for the collection and disposal of solid waste within Macon County.
Yes, sir.
Chris, well, you're welcome. Thanks for your patience.
Sure. I'll let the rest of them go. I mean, we took this up last month. This is, as far as I know, largely procedural. If you're going to amend an ordinance, you have to read it 2 months in a row, and you have to have a public hearing. I will assume that page is empty.
No.
For talking.
I don't have anybody on it, but I'll give people the opportunity to speak on it.
And I'll respond if needed.
Does anybody want to speak in regards to the, let's see how it's exactly written on here, the extension and modification of the exclusive franchise agreement for the collection and disposal of solid waste within Macon County? You have the floor.
I'm happy to take questions from the board. I think, like I said, I did not bring a copy, but I'm sure you've all seen the final draft of the amended. The amendments to the ordinance are, we're changing the date and we're eliminating the service map. And we separately approved fee increases to begin July 1st. I don't have anything to add to
Anything else?
that.
Any questions
That's
from the
good,
board?
Chris.
Any comments? We'll close the public hearing. We get a motion to approve.
Motion to approve, Mr.
Got a
Chairman.
motion by Commissioner Hickman to approve the extension and modification of the exclusive franchise agreement.
Second.
Got a second by Commissioner Shields. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Good evening, gentlemen.
All right. Public comment period. Hazel, you may be the only one. Welcome back. No, okay. I'll give you a chance, Chris.
Thank you.
Jack, I'll leave the line.
Well, guys, I'm here to ask you for money. It's not going to be in the budget, but I think we can use what I want out of the funds. I'm sorry, but working the election this year, volunteering with a lot of the candidates, watching the polls, watching what they went through this year, I did my research. Our machines are old. I know the board has brought it before your attentions before, and they've been promised, or at least allocated they would be new equipment purchased in 2023. Well, I talked to North Carolina, I talked to the inspectors and all them. Our issue this year with our machines was our Democrats voted double. And they caught it and they fixed it after the election, which caused a lot of people saying voters fraud, they're hiding votes, things like that. Well, digging through this, the guy that came here has 17 counties, and 3 of these counties is only on these machines and the software, which is Macon County, Graham County, and Clay County. All had the same issue, which Democrats voted twice in the machine with the software. Old, back in the 80s, early 80s. I started voting in 82, and the machines was bought in 81. So the machines are older than I have been voting. So I questioned them, what would it cost to upgrade, to get new ones. Now keep in mind, you can turn your own machines in and get credit. I do not know how much credit. But Graham County and Macon County both had the same issue, where it showed the Democrats voted double. Did that happen in 2020? No one caught it if it did. I'm not saying it happened, but it was never caught. Melanie did catch it on the night of the election, but did not know how to fix it, didn't know what to do. So she couldn't answer questions that people was pouring at her. So when we did with and I was down here every day when they did the canvas, when they did the recount, when they did everything they did, I watched, I sat, I listened, I asked questions. So the question was, how old is their machines? How old is the software? And he worked 17 counties, and he only has 3 counties and on his county that's on these machines and software, and those are the machines and the software that glitched on election. Now he said they went in and it was like a check mark on the software. They went in and fixed it, and the numbers came out. But why should we let the citizens think that our votes are not counting or we're being cheated? Basically cheated. And that's how some of them felt.
Derek, did you get anything from the Board of Elections?
The Board of Elections has actually listed the replacements on their capital improvement plan. It's scheduled in the next, coming up within the next couple of years. But I think that's a Board of Elections issue. I think that the...
Well, I'm coming to you as a citizen that votes.
Yeah, absolutely. The Board of Elections has to make that call, though. The state board.
Greg Beals and all them, the county has to replace those machines.
Right, when the Board of Elections comes and requests it. They've listed it on their capital improvement plan.
Well, he said that I'm coming to you as a citizen, not as a board member, or I'm coming to you by what I seen, what I witnessed. And it's very sad that his 17 counties, that 3 counties have this same glitch with the same machines, the same software, and it's the Unity software that they're using on these machines, which is 1981.
And again, Ms. Noel, I would hate to speak for the Board of Elections, so I can't. Like I say, they have to bring that request.
Well, the Board of Elections they know I'm here tonight.
Right.
They all know I'm here tonight. The North Carolina Board of Elections knows I'm here tonight, that I'm speaking on behalf, because I asked them, what would it cost Macon County to upgrade? Less than $275,000. Now, I know y'all think that's a lot of money. And it is a lot of money, but we're going to get credit for what we turn in. But something's got to be done. 2024 president election, and he told me it takes 6 months to set these machines up and get them right and ready. So if you want to do that in 2024, why not go ahead and try to purchase these things the beginning of the year? And I'm in front of y'all tonight, but I'm going to tell you, I'm coming back January with a new board. Whoever's on that board in January 2023, I'm coming back in January with the same complaint. Because we needed, as a citizen of Macon County that's been voting 40 years here, and I've been voting on the same machine. Apparently, my whole life, I've been voting on these same machines. I'm not saying that votes was double in 2020, but I am saying that's what happened this time.
But it was corrected.
It was corrected.
It's embarrassing.
But it was not corrected until Monday, because they didn't know what it was. And like he said, 3 counties out of 17 counties, and we just need to update. That's all I'm asking. You need to really consider it, do it, because after a while, people's going to, we don't want people to think our Board of Elections are hiding votes, and they were accused of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming.
All right, I think Narelle's no longer here. All right, Brittany.
Hi again. Two things. Thanks. First thing, I'm gonna mention the display of the library one more time because someone had asked me to read something on their behalf who couldn't be here because they're working, and it didn't pertain to the budget. It was specifically for Mr. Higgins' comments, which brings me to my next thing. Is I know Bobby wasn't filming the meeting on last Tuesday because he wasn't there, but that meeting was still filmed and your comments were still recorded. And I went back and looked at what I reported just to make sure that I didn't, because the Franklin Press isn't out yet, so they couldn't have recorded anything. So I'm literally the only person that could have done that. And so I went back and said looked what I reported, and it only said that you opposed the increased funding, not any sort of a funding cut. I'd read the actual Citizen Times article, which got all of their information from me, and it only said increase in funding. None of it said that you had ever said to cut funding for the library staff. So not anything I did or the actual Citizen Times did. But like I said, there's a video of that. I know that you said that the county doesn't allocate money for salaries and for only operating expenses, and while that very well may be the case procedurally, that doesn't change the fact that the conversation on Tuesday night last week was for $20,000 additional dollars out of the contingency fund for the employee salaries at the library. That's specifically what Commissioner Beal said. That's what he specifically asked for. And after you opposed it, Commissioner Beal said, well, I don't disagree with you on your view on that, but what we're talking about is the funding for salaries, and you responded with, I know, but those displays didn't put themselves up, those employees had to have done that. So your comments were specifically about the employees and the funding for the salaries for the employees. And if anything was disrespectful in that, then I don't want that to come across that way, but that's the factual account of what happened. And anyone who had any views, the majority of anyone that I know who spoke here tonight, watched that video and heard what you said verbatim. They didn't get that from any media twisting your words or manipulating anything that you said, because I'm the media that reported that, and I know without a shadow of a doubt that I did not do that, and I only referenced the increased funding from the library that you spoke and said that you could support because of the display. So there's that. But I do want to read a message from an employee that wanted to say something but couldn't be here, and so I think it's extremely important that we hear it because it's a part of Pride Month that gets forgotten when we're looking at LGBTQ. That plus community oftentimes gets overlooked, and that's something that's not a lifestyle, and so it's important to hear that. Did you know that Pride Month includes straight people who are intersex? Do you know what the definition of intersex is? I would like to take this time to educate you on a few of those topics. The definition of gender, either of the two sexes, male or female, especially when considered with the reference to social and cultural differences rather than biological ones. The term is also used more broadly to denote a range of identities that do not correspond to established ideas of male and female. The definition of sex, either of the two main categories, male and female, into which humans and most other living things are divided on the basis of their reproductive functions. What is the difference between the two? Well, sex refers to the different biological and physiological characteristics of males and females, such as reproductive organs, chromosomes, hormones, etc. Gender refers to the socially constructed characteristics of women and men, such as norm roles and relationships between groups of women and men. The definition of intersex. Intersex people are individuals born with any of the several characteristics, including chromosome patterns, gonads, or genitals. Did you know that 1 in 400 males are born with 47 XXY? This means that they have an extra chromosome, and that chromosome is an extra X. Physical appearance is no different than whatever a normal-looking man would be, but the actual science says otherwise. And did you know that there are many sex chromosome variations, including Turner syndrome, 1X? They're no different than your chromosome or genetic lotteries such as Down syndrome, autism, trisomy 18. Would you consider not funding a library that provides free education activities and reading books to children and adults because there was a display for Down syndrome? But you wouldn't? Well, why? Because you've been educated on that chromosome disorder. Educate yourself on the science, biology, and the human body, which is part of what Pride Month is about. People such as yourself is the reason why there's such a stigma around sex chromosome disorders. You walk past multiple people today who have one of those sex chromosome disorders and you didn't even know it. Shoot, they might not even know it. Klinefelter syndrome, 47XXY, is the most common but also the most undiagnosed chromosome disorder. While it's rare, it's only rare because men who have it don't feel comfortable sharing their information with uneducated people. They are not gay, transgender, or any other type of label that you want to add, nor do they have female productive organs or female sex organs. They're only different in their DNA. Intersex is used to define anything that is different than what you consider normal when it comes to human sex DNA. Intersex is represented with the color yellow in the rainbow, in the pride rainbow that you see on display. If you would like to continue to not include anyone with a sex chromosome disorder in your funding, you're actually holding that against someone who has a disorder, disability, or handicap that is identified in the state of North Carolina as a disability and is one of the approved lists for collecting Social Security disability funds. But because you think that the library should not help humans in general understand human DNA, you will not provide funding. You've kept yourself uneducated and will continue to keep the future uneducated. I was deeply hurt and offended at your hateful comment. Why? Because someone that I love with the deepest love that a human can have has a sex chromosome disorder. When I'm not at work, working for Macon County as a county employee, I'm taking that person to specialists, needed therapies, doctors, which is a job in itself because we have almost none of those resources in our community. As a board, you really should be more concerned about our lack of medical care. As an elected board member, you should be ashamed of yourself for being discriminatory towards taxpayers. Gay people pay taxes, trans people pay taxes, people with sex chromosome disorders pay taxes. If you need further literature, please go to the library and check out R. Gregory's Extra X. It's a book written for children to be educated on why they have an extra X chromosome. I expect that since it's written for children, it'd probably be a good spot for you to start. Thank you.
Can I respond? You made a statement there that you misquoted me.
No, I said I did not misquote you.
Did I make the statement that I wanted to cut employees' salaries in that last meeting?
I never said you did. I said you did.
I saw your TikTok video. So come on, don't give me that.
That's a personal TikTok video. That's not, I didn't even remember saying that. That's not anything
The
that I reported as
statement
a
you made a derogatory statement toward Miss Malidi. I never made that
I'm
statement.
happy to correct it. That's not anything that I reported anywhere that anybody would see other than the...
All right, let's move on. Additions, finally, additions to the agenda. I might cut somebody. Do we have any additions? All right, can I get a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Bill, second by Commissioner Young, all in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Mayor, appreciate your patience. Welcome, or I guess it's Vice Chairman Norton today. Mr. Mayor, welcome. Let's hear about the update on Macon County Airport Authority. Got a 30-second. I'm kidding, Jack.
Now you know why I retired.
You never had this kind of... What happened?
We've had several meetings.
Oh, yeah.
When I was working, I remember this meeting room was full when we were talking about putting in the landfill. That was really hot. And Oscar Ledford took the heat for that, along with the Board of Commissioners at that time. But it's a tough job being an elected official because no matter what decision you make, somebody's not going to like it.
Somebody don't like my spaghetti sauce.
That's just the way it works. So I never expected to be in the position I'm in now, but I didn't come here to talk about me. I came here to talk about something, and I'm not asking for any money.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. But I would like to say thank you to the board on behalf of our airport authority, which I serve on as the vice chair. That airport authority, as you all know, includes both myself, Pete Haycock, Gary Schmidt, and our chairman, Richard Rhodes, and Janet Schuler, who you all appointed this past year as the first female on our airport authority, and they're all working good together. We do appreciate Mr. Bill's input as our liaison. We worked through a lot of problems dealing with state DOT, aviation, and DOT roads, and other things that affect us, and we appreciate his service as our liaison. We appreciate the board's commitment to our airport because it is a big economic development tool for us to have. And as you probably heard before, it's the fact that we do have at least one major industry here this year because the airport was here. And they would not have located here, they would have located somewhere else had they had an airport. And so we don't see all that goes on behind the scenes, but it's a real economic impact, and we appreciate the county's support, and has been over the years. I'd be remiss if I didn't stop and say one thing. You know, we lost our former airport chairman this past month in May. Mr. Miles Gregory was somewhat of a mentor to me when I came to work here in 1985. I believe Mr. Higdon was working for the health department way back then. Probably, weren't you?
I don't remember.
You don't remember back that far. But anyway.
You remember getting that tax money though.
but anyway, Miles Gregory was a great leader in the community, and being served as a county commissioner, and also as president of the County Commissioners Association, like Mr. Bill has been elected. We've had two from Macon County, which is unusual from this far west of the state. But not only was he a county commissioner and involved in that, he was very, very passionate and involved in seeing that our airport was taken care of. And I remember sitting in another room, our regular room, and Mr. Gregory coming making a report on the airport, and he always did a good job. And I never saw him upset. I never saw him irritated. I never saw him call anybody any names. But he was always appreciative of whatever we had and what we could provide for him. So he's going to be missed. And I'm sure they'll be having a ceremony sometime. And we'll all probably look forward to that. But I'll get back to what I came here for, is to do a little report on the airport. As we mentioned last time when I met with you before, we want to make sure that the airport authority keeps the Board of County Commissioners updated on what's going on out there, because you have a lot of investment in there, and it means a lot to a lot of people here in the county. So I've made a list of a few things to cover, and I've got copies here that I'll leave with you. You don't have to worry about them now, but I'll pass them out before I leave. Basically, a copy of the comments that I'm going to cover in a written form, and also a copy of our Code of Ethics that was just recently passed. First of all, you recall back when the Airport Authority went through a lease arrangement with Macon Air in 2018, and Mr. Drake's company agreed to take it over as the fixed-based operator. And we had a contract, a lease agreement with Macon Air that was pretty much just a one lease that was covered everything. Well, that went along pretty good until the FAA, somebody said, well, we don't really like that. And so the FAA said, well, you need two things. You need a lease for the grounds that you're operating on, and you need a management contract as well. And so our attorney, Joe Collins, and working with Mr. Drake's attorney, and with the FAA, with the State Division of Aviation, went through all this for the past 2 or 3 years, and finally got it worked out, took out the language that FAA had a problem with, got it revised, that was approved by Mr. Drake's company, approved by the State DOT Aviation, and have been approved by our Airport Authority. And so all of our contract issues that were holding us up from the FAA, as far as that goes, have been resolved. Thank goodness for that. So that's one good thing. The other thing is that and we do have a letter from them saying they have no objection to what we have operating now. So we have 2 agreements now. One's a ground lease, and the other one's a management contract, and they both go hand in hand. And so there's no major changes, just a few wording changes and so forth. Another thing that we talked about at the Airport Authority is something that you all have to deal with as elected officials, and that is Code of Ethics. And the state, several years ago, said that all elected officials need to, if you're elected, go through a training session and then be trained in what Code of Ethics is and agree to that. One of the things that I read about that was the conduct of local government officials and public employees affects public perceptions of trust in government. One thing that's missing right now nationwide, I think. Citizens expect local officials and public employees to act in the best interest of the public and not to use their office for personal benefit. Everybody would agree with that. That's a good thing. The airport authority was created by the county through legislation, and it was passed in Raleigh in 1999, I believe it was. It went into effect in 2001, if I'm not mistaken. And all government agencies are required to have a code of ethics and agree to it. What the airport authority is an organization that's been created by the county and the state. And it's a political unit, which is the county, and the entity or organization created by this political unit should comply with code of ethics guidelines as well. And so knowing that, our airport authority has adopted the code of ethics, and it's been unanimously passed and approved by our airport authority. And I've got copies I'll leave with you. We've got everybody who signed the resolution except Mr. Rhodes, who's out of town, so as soon as we get him to sign the resolution, we'll get you a copy of the original resolution to go in your minutes, along with our signed final copy of the code of ethics. But the code of ethics basically says that we will do basically the same thing you all do, not use our position for any personal benefit, and that we will operate in an open and informed way, making decisions in the best interest of the public and not for personal benefit. And if anyone in our organization has been accused of that, then our code of ethics says that we will notify their appointing authority, which would be you, to take any action you might deem necessary. We have great members on the board. I don't think there'll be any problem with that, but this is for the record to let people know that they need to have trust and support of the people who are making decisions on their behalf. So I want to leave a copy of that with you. The other project we've been working on is the need to upgrade the fuel farm at the airport. It's been out there for a long, long time. And our new FBO operator has made some modifications to be able to fuel planes who can't pull up to the tanks by using trucks and so forth. But we were recently, this past fall, we were awarded a grant of about $900,000. And you all appropriated the 10% max, $100,000, for us to do this $1 million project. It was, of course, and the airport authority wants to thank you again sincerely for the board stepping up and making that 10% max available to do this project. The design and the engineering of that project has been done. It's been out to bid, and we did finally receive 3 bids. It's hard to get bids on projects like this, but we finally got 3 bids. And the bids range from $763,000 up to $1.7 million. That's a wide range. And what we found out was that the low bid had to be rejected because the North Carolina Department of Transportation Aviation Division, they said it didn't meet all the qualifications. That the contractor didn't meet all the qualifications that were required. And if we had done that, we probably wouldn't have gotten the grant money to do it. So they had to go to the second lowest bidder. The second lowest bidder came in at $811,722. So we're still within our $1 million budget. That doesn't include our design, engineering, construction, management, observation, and inspections, and all that kind of stuff that goes along with it. So we think we're within budget on that one. The other thing is hard to get these tanks in. So they've been ordered, but they're not going to be delivered until September. And when they're delivered in September and the construction starts, they have 90 days to complete it. And it's a not-to-exceed contract, so they're pretty much locked in. That lets you know where we are on that, so we're hoping to have all that up and running by 2023. We also had an opportunity from the state to do some improvements around the airport and set up the runway. So the airport authority was recently approved, we approved a new maintenance agreement. We have a maintenance agreement with the state DOT Aviation that they'll do certain maintenance things just like they do on the highways here, on airports. And so we were notified this spring that the state was going to be making a maintenance award to the airport authority, and that would include runway rejuvenation to clean and paint and add black outlines and crack seal. Also, it included work on the apron and the helipad for removing and curing compound, clean and repaint and add black outlines. All this is be done by the state. It's being done now. It's almost completed. If it's not completed now, it will be in the next few days. At no cost to the airport, at no cost to the FBO, and at no cost to the county. So that's a big improvement. We've had a lot of pilots who complained about the condition of the runway. This will be a big improvement for them. So we're looking forward to that. The state also requires us to go out and solicit bids or RFQs for engineering services every 5 years, just like you have to do on landfills and when you're selecting an engineer for a job, for a project, or an architect, and so forth. So our engineering services are required to be advertised, reviewed, and the board has to make a decision on who to employ and engage as the engineers. You can't base it on the salary alone. It has to be based on qualifications. After you select the most qualified person, as you all know, then you can negotiate how much you're going to pay for that. So that's what we've done. And the airport authority has agreed to continue our engineering contract with W.K. Dixon. And they've been there for another 5 years. So they've been the airport engineers for several decades. I can't remember back when. I think the first one I remember us having was from Chattanooga. They did a terrible job, and W.K. Dixon came in, and it's been them ever since. So Jimmy Luther does a terrific job for us, helping us with grants, helping us with maintenance, helping us with opportunities out there. So W.K. Dixon is going to be our engineer for the next 5 years for the airport. The other thing that we've been working on is the MOA. Memorandum of Agreement, or MOU, as some people call it. Mr. Beal is very familiar with this. Back when the runway was going to be extended 500 feet, because it was on a historic site, on Indian, Cherokee, or Indian, they didn't specify Cherokee, but probably several tribes occupied that area over the last several thousand years. But there was a lot of artifacts out there. You had to do an archaeological study, which I think ended up, correct me if I'm wrong, somewhere around $2 million to get that done so that the runway could be extended. That was done, and in order to do that, the FAA required us to have a memorandum of agreement with all the affected parties, which is not just the county and the airport authority and so forth, but also the Eastern Band, Cherokees, and 3 or 4 other tribes that are now in Oklahoma. So we went through all that process year after year. Miles Berry worked tirelessly on that, trying to get that approved. It was approved by everyone except our Eastern Band. And so it carried on. It started in 2008 or 2009, and finally in 2013, the MOA ran out. So FAA said that was over with. That was in 2013, so you might as well forget that. We don't need to go back and do that. So what you need is a new MOA now. So any other property that's disturbed out there is going to have a new MOA. And so the good news about that is we are working much closer with the Eastern Band. And we've got, thanks to Mr. Bill and some other folks, we've got some good contacts over there. And we're hoping to get some of those folks over here to take a look at the airport, because it does benefit the reservation, because a lot of people fly to Macon County Airport and go to Harrah's and places over there. This is the closest, best airport for them to use. And so I think the chief sees the benefit of working cooperatively with all of his partners here in the western part of the state, and we're one of the partners. And so we're hoping to, when we get ready to do another MOA, we're hoping that it'll be a whole lot smoother process than we've had in the past. So that's looking good. I don't have really anything else to add, except that we're hoping to keep you up to date as the project starts, and we'll let you know when we have some kind of I don't think we'll have an open house for a fuel farm, but we'll let you know when it's up and running and when we can celebrate out there. We're probably going to have some more events out there for it over the next year that will involve public input, because another thing that we need to do is make sure that the public understands what the airport is, how it's funded, and what benefits it is to Macon County. So we want to continue to do that, and we can do that only with your help, and we appreciate that. Everybody on the board says thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I'll try to answer any questions if you have any.
I think we're too tired.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you, Jack.
All right, Mr. Manager.
Yes, sir, Mr.
Nantahala Library Community Center Architect proposal.
As you'll recall, we sought proposals from architects. We had an architect that had worked with the library before. I think it was Keith Hargrove. Jack has met with him. Jack has met with Mr. Hargrove, Jack Morgan. And in doing so, Mr. Hargrove has also met with both the Fontana Regional Library as well as the Community Center. He's given us a proposal of an amount of $27,000 that will, that amount includes the design as well as seeing this, overseeing the construction project from the architect standpoint. What you have in front of you is his proposal and a resolution exempting architectural services, less than $50,000. By doing this, once if this board approves the resolution, what I will then do is negotiate a contract with Mr. Hargrove that is representative of the terms outlined in that proposal, not to exceed $27,000 as stated in the proposal.
What was it, 27,000?
27,000.
Motion to approve, Mr. Chairman.
So the motion to approve the resolution exempting architectural services for Nantahala Library Communities building in Macon County, North Carolina from the provisions of Article 3D of Chapter 143 of the North Carolina General Statutes. And then let's approve that one first. So we got a motion to approve the resolution.
Jerry did, I don't mind to as well.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, second by Commissioner Shields. No,
If you're talking about the 27,000,
No, I was going to do the resolution
Talking about the
first.
resolution.
Okay, I've got a motion by Commissioner Higgins, second by Commissioner Young. Thank you. All in favor? Aye.
No action needed on the proposal, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
I'll negotiate the contract for the terms of the proposal not to exceed $27,000.
Darlene, thank you for your patience. Request for increase in matching funds for Macon County Transit Grant.
Yes. They came to me and asked if we had any more projects that we wanted to do. And I told them about the bus awning that's scheduled for 2024. And they gave us that money, plus they gave us money for additional building expenses. I'm asking for $125,000 more in match.
And it is in the budget.
It's in the budget.
It has been incorporated in the budget.
Approve it?
I'm not the liaison over there. I don't, who's the liaison to the Transit Authority?
It's in the budget.
It's in the budget.
I mean, what action is needed?
Just for, you can sign a sheet of paper saying that we're gonna get.
Y'all are good with this? I'm good with it.
$8,000.
I mean, thank you. I mean, yeah.
You need a motion?
We need a motion.
You have to have a motion.
I'll make the motion. I'll make a motion we approve.
You sign it.
Can we get a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, you sign it.
I'll sign.
Okay.
Have Paul vote on that. Not in your Paul vote on
All right, Joe. Bond agreement
vote
for
yea
Chip
or nay,
State
Paul?
Village Phase
Don't
2.
worry about me.
Joe, you need some coffee?
I'll thank Joanne and Tim for hanging with us tonight.
Thank y'all.
They didn't know what they were getting into tonight. That's our developers. Sunbar LLC would like to enter into a bond agreement with Macon County for Phase 2 of Gemstone Village. This will be for unbuilt roads and unlaid utilities. The amount of that bond will be $735,992.50, and the developer will be putting up a certified check.
You good with it? Get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Commissioner Young, second by Commissioner Bill. All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks for all you guys do.
Y'all waited that long?
In case.
All right, can I get a motion? We get a motion to approve the fireworks permits for Nantahala Volunteer Fire and Rescue, the Town of Franklin, and Highlands Area Chamber of Commerce.
All the documents seem in order,
Documents and
Mr. Chairman. I make a motion we approve.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Bill, second by Commissioner Young. All in favor?
Aye.
Ready to draw permits in hand, I presume.
Mike, we got all the documentation we need.
Okay.
Got it.
Good. All right, can we get a motion to approve the consent agenda unless there's something someone would like to remove to one of the commissioners to discuss further?
That's high level.
Just a lot of us. They always are.
Year end.
Year end, that's right.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Commissioner Young, second by Commissioner Shields. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Let that record reflect up. Forwarded out to the commission. I don't think there are any appointments. Mr. Manager, unless it's really, really important, I don't think this will be a great night.
3 items, Mr. Chairman.
No, I'm just kidding. This is really, really important. We don't need to have a closed session. You think we've got enough on our...
We're good. We don't have need. We're adjourned.
Okay.
So we're going to recess this one to when, Mr. Chairman, make sure I understand.
It's adjourned.
This one's adjourned.
It's adjourned.
If we do, the July meeting will be recessed for that.
Oh, for the, I thought Mr. Shields said, when do we go to meet again?
Liaison committees meeting the 29th.
Oh, that ain't it.
We have another one, but it's 7 days after.
Okay.
Young, to make us a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I will second.
Motion by Commissioner Young. second by
Commissioner Young.
All in favor?
Aye. Good job, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir.